The following program deals with a controversial
subject.
The theories expressed are not the only possible interpretation.
The viewer is invited to make a judgment based on all available information.
the top talents in the comic book business are here to tell everything they know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Industry of Comics. This is episode 20 of the Industry of Comics show. I am joined by Jesse and Dennis, as always, two longtime industry vets who have been in the trenches their whole career. And we've got a great show for you tonight. We've got two excellent guests. The second half, we'll be talking to Ryan Kincaid, a comic book artist and creator. And coming up in just a few seconds, one of the most influential people in comic books over the last, couple decades, Alan Stewart at Hall of Heroes, who is now a museum owner. So how you guys doing? How's the week been treating you so well? You guys doing good?
Good.
You know what? I think this is the first week I can tell you that 42 years of doing this has kind of jumped all on me on the same week. As we get ready to do our new venture in Florida. We're very excited about that. I think we feel a little bit more confident now in what we're doing. And then new things happening in the store in Glendale, Arizona, as we get ready to almost remask it, reinvent it. I think that's the new thing that we got going on there. So it's been and it's only Tuesday, and that's the crazy part. I feel like this is like day 8 of this week. So.
Wow. That's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah. I'm still on the personal trip right now. My daughter's going off to her first internship, her summer internship at the Illinois Raptor Center, where she's going to rescue bald eagles and osprey and some other stuff, and it's kind of crazy. She's gonna maybe get to help breed Canadian snow owls.
Wow.
So plus it's my hometown, so I get to go back and see family. And then next week I'll be here back to the grind of just being a comic book shop guy. Plus I have to sneak an auction in Thursday morning. So
there you go.
A lot of comic books at that auction.
There you go.
Yep.
Well, we've got a busy month coming up, you guys. July is right around the corner, which means San Diego Comic-Con. And it's going to be crazy planning for that over the next month and getting, all the schedules down and, what we're going to do each night and how we're going to do shows and all that stuff.
Right.
So.
And the crazy part about San Diego, as news starts to filter, it's going to be a whole new look for San Diego Con. Just dealing with how you deal with some of the publishers at this con. They have switched everything up. So that news will be coming out. And then just how some of these folks have decided to maybe sell a little bit more beyond San Diego before San Diego comes out, and obviously I disagree with that, but that's a talk for then, I guess. But we'll see a lot of changes.
Well, I think plus there's so many change-ups in the industry. The big news today, Philip Sabick is leaving Boom, and Philip ain't going someplace else unless he's got something else he wants to do. So we're going to be looking forward to that announcement. Plus there's a big announcement from Dan DiDio at San Diego. There's going to be so many huge announcements in San Diego. We'll be very busy that whole week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, why don't we get into it, Dennis?
So, guys, normally I like to brag that like Jesse and I know everybody in this industry, and we just pick up a phone and we call up one of our friends and we have one of those personal discussions with you. This next guest is somebody I've known about for 30 years. Jesse's known about for 30 years. I don't think he's met either Jesse or I, so we never knew who he was personally, other than his accomplishments. And then when you start looking into your pre-check for the guest, you're like, oh, and he did that. Oh, and he does this. Oh, and yeah. And it's just one of those guys I'm so excited to bring to the show because I'm excited that I want to meet him and talk to him. So hopefully you guys enjoy it too. Alan Stewart, everybody, from Hall of Heroes.
Boy, Dennis, that's a big buildup, buddy. I don't want to let anybody down now. You raised the bar up to here for me.
Yeah.
I'm a short guy, so that bar can go pretty low.
Yeah,
So with Alan here, Hall of Heroes is just one of those imprints, and Jesse and I talk endlessly about your brand. And the brand is not just the brand, but it so attaches to the owner of the brand.
Right.
And you have been so instrumental about attaching the name Hall of Heroes to everything you've done and building that brand into something that I think everybody's heard of, but they don't know enough about. And that's what this show's about tonight.
You know, what confuses people, and I get this all the time because the museum's been around for 17 years. So obviously that's the main thing that the brand is known for. But originally it was a comic book store. So like you guys, you know, I was a comic book store owner at 1.2, you know, 30 years ago. And then it became a publishing company. And I get that all the time. People come to the museum like, hey, you guys have anything to do with the publishing company? Yeah, Bog, from 30 years ago. And it's like, yeah, I was the publisher. I was the founder of Hall of Heroes, the publishing company. And then I got out of the comic book industry, kept collecting, but was out professionally for about 7 years. And then I kind of got the itch, wanted to get back in the industry. You know, my personal collection was one of the largest in the world. And I decided, you know what? I'm gonna open up a museum, the first and only one of its kind. And I had this crazy dream, and I built this 2-story replica of the Hall of Justice on my property. And it was kind of like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come, you know. And I tell you what, I owe a lot to Stan Lee. You know, he came out and filmed 2 episodes of his Superfan television series. Back in 2012, got our little museum that could on the national stage. And we've now been on a dozen national television shows. Yeah, that's the old location. Yeah, those are pictures from the original location. But yeah, our new location is, of course, you know, double the size. And we just got just the stuff that we have. So instance, last week, we just got in 3 new Marvel costumes from the Netflix series. We got in the Kingpin's costume from Daredevil. We got both Luke Cage and Diamondback costumes from the Luke Cage series. So those just went up last week on exhibit. So, I mean, we're just always getting cool new stuff in.
Hey, Alan, I want to ask you the first question. So you said you got that itch. What was the itch moment? What just, did you look at a comic book? What happened?
Oh, you mean as far as like what started me when I was a kid?
Yeah. Well, no, as far as I came back into after 7 years.
Well, you know, I kept collecting. So I never stopped collecting. And then just some friends of mine were talking about the collection, you know, and of course, like a lot of guys, you know, and you know, ladies, you know, I kind of thought, hey, this is going to be my retirement. And, you know, then I just decided, and we kind of talked about, you know, because people always wanted to see it because I had a building there before, which was where my real estate firm was. So in that building, I had real estate offices on one side. I had my stuff in storage on the other side. I had clients always, you know, wanting to look at it and see it. And I just kind of saw the interest and the joy. And that's kind of what kind of made me think, hey, you know, maybe I could make a museum of this. And if I'm going to make a museum, it's got to be in the Hall of Justice because Super Friends was like my favorite cartoon growing up.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
Exactly. And, you know, people kept asking me if I was going to build a Legion of Doom beside it. I never did. But
this is like every kid's dream to do.
Oh, it's my dream as a kid. I mean, it was like I'm like Peter Pan. I'm never going to grow up, you know.
Hey, that's what keeps us all young. We stay young in our minds.
Tell people. Yeah. I tell people, surrounded myself by toys and comics and artwork and Hollywood memorabilia. It keeps me young.
Absolutely.
So back with what Jesse started on.
Yeah.
But what was the first time you remember holding a comic book in your hand? And tell us about that experience.
You know, my dad started me out with comic books when I was probably about age 8. So that would have been back in 1978. And some of my earliest comics, and it's funny, you know, we just had Keith Pollard at our museum for a signing last Saturday for our Marvel Day. And I pulled out Iron Man 112. And I told him, I said, you know, this was one of my first comic books as a kid. One of my first DC comics would have been like Green Lantern 106, Mike Grell issue, Green Lantern, Green Arrow. And Mike has been to our museum, and now Keith has been there. We had Jim Shooter there last year. So, I mean, we've had a lot of these. What's really cool for me is these artists that I grew up admiring, they're now coming and admiring what I'm doing. And it's so flattering and so cool that, that my idols are now like, I've got a lot of these guys that I'm personal friends with that I grew up, reading their stuff and enjoying their stuff. And it's so cool. I mean, if I could go back to like my 12-year-old self, go back in time and say, hey, you're going to eventually have Adam West's Batman costume and you're going to have William Catchgrave's American Hero costume. And it would be like mind blowing to like my 12 or 13 or 14 or 15-year-old self.
That's
wonderful.
amazing.
Yeah. It's always funny that in the comic book world, I'm going on my 42nd year now, that when I talk to people, most people, the sweet spot is 10 to 12, where you kind of had a comic here and there, but
Right.
12, you get kind of engaged. Obviously, you're collecting in the late 70s, the early 80s. So we're kind of defining the market, what a Marvel graphic novel is. We're actually doing limited series and all that. How do you feel that from that time to today, not to jump way too far in today, but have we advanced tremendously, or are we still just kids collecting comic books?
I think we're still kids at heart collecting comic books, because we're all old men now, but we're still kids at heart, and so it's like, because you don't really see when you go to the comic book store. Yep, there's Keith. Yeah, just that's from last Saturday.
Well, Keith, his son used to play Yu-Gi-Oh with my son at my store.
Oh,
and
okay.
I sat behind Keith at our local movie theater watching Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh,
Keith
that's
is just one of the
fantastic.
Greatest guys ever.
Oh, Keith is great. He was fantastic. Yeah. We went to dinner afterwards, and I made sure I had a Black Cat actress there for him. Since he was the co-creator, so that was key. And he was so impressed that I had a Black Cat there because he took a bunch of pictures, just him and her.
And he got so excited because if you remember Amazing Spider-Man 2 with Andrew Garfield, they hint at Felicia being in they have a character named Felicia.
Right.
And when they call her Felicia, he starts nudging his son.
Oh yeah.
It's like, that was me. I did that. And it was just so great to be sitting behind him with my kids and we've all known each other for so long, just as parents. And Keith was great. We loved having him. He was really shocked because I pulled out one of our art archives and I had from Green Lantern 161. We actually have the first 10 pages of the original pages.
Wow.
And you never see 10 consecutive pages like that.
Right.
And it was weird. It was a fluke. I had a guy that came to the museum about 3 years ago, brought those in, wanted me to appraise them. I'm like, I don't want to praise him. I want to buy him. What do you want for him? Because I'm a huge Green Lantern fan. And so he had those. And so I pulled them out because those were, Keith's pages. He did those. And so when I pulled those out last Saturday, he was like, he had never seen, other than when he said he hadn't seen them since he originally worked on them.
Wow.
And he's never seen, that's the book right there. We have the first 10 pages. I wish I had the cover. We don't have the cover, but we have pages 1 through 10 consecutive in our art archives.
Oh, wow. That's super cool.
So, it's kind of funny as I'm thinking about this. How do you work with your insurance company? Can you self-appraise this? How does that work when you're talking to the insurance company?
It's really weird. Normally you cannot self-appraise your own collection.
Right.
So you're correct on that, Jesse. I'm almost kind of given a pass just because, I've been all these shows. I appraise for American Pickers, so people know that I am a certified appraiser. So that's where it's a little different for me, where I kind of get to like segue some of that stuff. There are some instances on certain things where we do have to have a second outside appraisal. But for our current insurance company, I was able to do, they were okay with me doing it.
Wow. Okay. That
but
awesome.
You're right. That's normally not the case. So this is a rare exception to that. This is not the rule by any means.
It's important to also bring this up because one of the topics that we wanted to talk to you about is all of that memorabilia in one place.
it's got to be pretty enticing for the supervillains of our world.
Yeah, everybody knows about that last year. That was national news.
Yeah, so this is for those of you guys that
jail.
Yeah, for those of you guys that don't know, the Hall of Heroes Museum was basically, I wouldn't say, I don't know if you call it robbed or you had.
I mean that'd be correct.
Yeah, so robbed of how many items and what was the total cost on those items that they took?
They came in, alarms were going off, they were in and out in 4 minutes with 50 comics, and the value was about $1.5 million. So they had obviously cased our place. This was planned out. They broke into 5 cases all on the Marvel side. But they were, basically they were busted within a week of leaving our museum. So
once again, chat, DC Comics are always undesirable, even to robbers.
Well, that depends. I mean, I'm a big Green Lantern fan, and Super Friends is DC. So, I mean, DC's got some good stuff, too, know. And, of course, Batman. Everybody likes Batman, so.
Yeah. That had to have been stressful as all get out for those 4 days. I mean.
It was, well, actually, I mean, it's still going on because we still have our stuff back, and it's been like 13 months. It's still ongoing.
So do they know where the stuff is, or they're just not telling?
That's the problem. They do not.
Wow.
They found 30 of our 50 books in the house, and when they broke in on these guys, they had house, garage, 2 storage units, floor to ceiling filled because of all the robberies they did over 5 years.
Right.
Comic-Cons, comic stores, antique stores, they just hit places all over the country. We were the biggest heist that they pulled off, but we're also the ones that got them busted too, just because Hall of Heroes is so connected to the industry. Every auction house knows us, every comic vendor, dealer. So, Sunday after it happened, I'm sending emails out to everybody with scans and a full list and all of this. And 4 days later, one of our books popped up in Miami. Guy there got a hold of me immediately. And then we got the eBay information to the police. And then that took another 5 weeks before they actually busted in on them. I was getting aggravated because of how long it was taking.
How many of those 20 books disappeared during that 5 weeks?
Exactly. That's the detectives in Florida think that they have them stashed somewhere else because they had so much stuff there. It didn't look like they were moving things quickly.
They even stole tortoises from the zoo, which is crazy.
Number 1, or Young Allies number 1, or Hulk 1 and 2, or X-Men 1, first Iron Man. Those keys are the ones still missing.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to tell this very funny story. So probably about 15 years ago, I had just brought in my personal collection of Carl Barks. And I had it on the table, and I was appraising them as I sent them in to get graded. And at the same time, a gentleman came in to sell me some comics. And I said, really not interested, right? Yeah. And it only took me a second to turn my head away. About 4 hours later, I'm like, where the heck is my Carl Barks collection?
Ooh.
Right? And completely gone. Every issue, great shape. I've had them since 1982.
Oh, wow.
And so the next day, here comes this lady, and she's like, do you buy comic books? I'm like, sure. Yeah, sure. And sure enough, she plops up this stack of Carl Barks books.
What an idiot.
And I'm like, first of all, there's 25 stores in town, and you bring the books back that were stolen yesterday to the store
that's dumb.
Stolen at. So, I feel you, not as big as what you lost, but it is amazing. It's almost like people are taking an arm off you when that happens. And I tell you what, I was devastated. So it happened at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And so, we got the call from the police and the alarm company, and, I get there and I see, the damage. So there's glass everywhere because they busted in the glass display cases. So, on top of the stolen books, there was about $10,000 worth of damage too. Sure. Yeah.
And so, I go in there, and it's just Sunday morning. I was just devastated because I spent 45 years building this collection. And I'm like, what kind of rat bag, would break into a nonprofit and steal from somebody that's trying to share the history and the love of 85 years of comic book history.
Yeah.
Sure. It's like, it takes a real piece of crap to do something like that, true supervillain.
Right.
And so, so in fact, I mean, I was just, I'll be honest, I wanted to just break down in tears, and I almost did. And I got lightheaded. I thought I was going to faint. I mean, it was like somebody ripped part of my soul out, and I even thought about shutting the museum down.
Ooh.
That's one of the thoughts that crossed my mind. It's like, you know what? And then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let one person ruin what I've spent my life doing, preserving the history, educating with the history, sharing with people. But it was truly devastating, and it was, and so that was a Sunday morning. We kind of, a couple of my board members were there because, 3 of us have access to the alarms and we get the calls. So 3 of us were there. And we were just kind of talking about it. And the guy said, you know what, we should open today on Sunday. Let's get this glass cleaned up. Let's open up for the day. And they thought it might be best if I worked that day. And they were right. I worked that Sunday and, I didn't feel like it, didn't want to. I just wanted to go curl up, and just like in the fetal position, but what really helped me was people coming and joining the museum, talking to me. It kind of brought me out of my slump, and my devastation and my depression and whatever else. But it really helped for me to work that day and talk to people and share with people, the love that we all have for the media.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's great. You said a great word during that last piece there. Tell me about education. Is there a lack of it? Is it needed? Or are we so far into social media where the influencers kind of take control of that versus us experiencers, the 3 of us on the screen? That's still part of our mantle to educate?
It is for us, because that's one of the things we do. We are, not only do we preserve the history, but we educate. So if you go around the museum, I have all this signage around that talks about certain pieces, the history. Like, for example, we have a record section. And so we have like the old Super Friends record player from the 70s. And we have all the, the Peter Pan comic books with the comics and the little 45 records. And then the big records, from mainly the 70s and 80s. And then I have like a sign up there that talks about the company that made all those and their history and what they started with. And I have a color form section that, we talk about color forms and Presto Magics. We've got those. We have a coloring book section, and I kind of talk about the history, of coloring books that started in the 1880s, but they originally called paint books. And then Crayola, create crayons in the 1930s. So I talk about that kind of history where it pulls it all together.
Well, and actually, you're right there in Elkhart. Isn't that the thermos manufacturing capital of the world? So
no, RVs.
No, I know the RVs, but I think like either Aladdin or Igloo is out of somewhere around you.
Not that I'm aware of.
Really? Okay. I'm going to have to look that up because
It's not in Elkhart. I can tell you the 2 things we're known for is musical instruments and RVs and Holly Hills.
I drive by the RV Hall of Fame every time you're known for museums too, because you have the RV museum and you.
Right. Yeah, and we're the top 2 museums in the area.
Yes.
Yeah. You've worn many hats in this industry, comic book store owner, museum owner, publisher. One of the questions that we also always ask all of our guests is, other than a place that sells comic books, to you, what is a comic book store? What should a comic book store be?
Nobody's ever asked me that before, Brian. That's a good question. A comic book store is many things. A comic book store is a gathering for a lot of nerdy introverts, kind of being among their own people. So it's a social thing.
Amen.
So like a lot of guys our age go every Wednesday, get their books. And so I get to, my local comic book store, which is Buy Me Toys. You guys are probably familiar. Kelly and Casey, Buy Me Toys. Good friends of mine. Casey was one of my clients at my comic book store at Hall of Heroes when he was in high school. So I've known I've known them for like 35 years. And they're great people.
And they also did the publisher
They sponsor
thing
our
too.
Comic-Con that we do every year. But so I go in there, I'm there between 11 and 11:30 every Wednesday.
Right.
You know, getting what I call my weekly fix.
Yeah.
You know, as we all would call it that, right?
Yep.
So you know, I get my comics, I see the same people, you know, and talk to them, greet them, you know, so, you know, run into, you know, the same people. So it's a social setting. It's, you know, anyway, just, you know, it's hard to describe, it's hard to compare to other things where, you know, I don't want to use the word addiction because it makes it sound negative, but it kind of is. It's like, you know, you can't wait till Wednesday to go get your new issues.
Yes.
Right.
You know, it's like you get the jitters, you get that fix, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and I think we all experience that. And so does everyone that comes to the comic book stores every Wednesday.
Yeah, I think the most important thing whenever I ask that question that I love to hear is what you said, that it's this social place, right? It's this place where you can go in and you feel you know, you feel like everybody else is like you. I hate to say that, like the Cheers, where everybody knows your name, you know, but you can go in.
That's a good point, Brian. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Brian, I've always said that in times of trouble, they always do these stories about bars and liquor stores doing the most amount of business. And I've always said a comic book shop is the bar and liquor store for geeks. The owner of the shop and the employees are the bartenders. It's just like Cheers. We have the guy sitting at the end of the bar that knows everything about everything. You know, it is just the bar and liquor store for geeks.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of Cheers, we've had Cliff at our museum.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Ratzenberger has been to our museum, and he is a trip.
Wow.
Yeah.
We had him at our Comic-Con about 5 years ago. So he was one of our guests at Comic-Con. So when we have the celebrities in town for Comic-Con, we do a private tour Saturday night with dinner, drinks catered at the museum. And so everybody gets to enjoy the museum and play the arcade games and the pinball machines and see the history. And it's just a great time. But we had him, we actually went to a restaurant with him one night. And, you know, he was you know, he made sure he sat right beside my wife, you know, because she used to play Catwoman at cons and stuff. So she looks really good in black tights. So he made sure he sat right up next to her. And he was,
smart man.
It was funny. It was funny because he's like 85 now or something like that. He's in his mid 80s. And so this is a great Cheers story. So he like disappeared for like 20 minutes from the table and we didn't know where he went. So I went looking for him. So I go around and I go to the bar. He's sitting on the bar with two blondes on each arm, and he's in his 80s. I'm like, you go, John. You go, buddy.
What is so funny about this, when you brought him up, I was going to say, was he with a blonde or a brunette? He used to be my customer at Nordstrom. And every time he came in, it was a blonde or brunette with them. And it didn't matter.
That's funny. No redheads for him, huh?
No redheads.
He didn't like any Mary Jane.
Okay, so I'm the only one that I only have one story about John. And we were set up at the Star Wars Celebration in 2019. And we're about to close up. The whole place is empty. They've cleared out all the fans. It's just the dealers. And John just walks up to our booth just by himself. And he's looking for... And he's looking for his little Star Wars figure. and it was just, and I'm just like, no, I don't have it. But if I'd known you were coming, I would have had one here.
Right.
Damn it.
That's great. That's excellent.
But yeah, the show was over. He had done his little signing over in the thing, and he just wanted to shop for Star Wars shit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
When was your what years was your comic book store?
Well, it was only for a year. It was in 1992 to 1993. I started Holly Heroes, the publishing company, in 93. So I gave up doing the store because I was focusing on the publishing company.
Yeah, perfect. That's a perfect segue. Yeah.
That's what my mentor Gary Reed did. He had stores all over the Detroit area, but when he started Caliber Comics, it was getting too hard to run that. Plus,
it is. Well, plus, I also had a full-time. Well, I was working 4 jobs at that time. So I had the comic book store, I had the publishing company. I worked in the newspaper industry for almost 30 years. I retired from that about 7 years ago. So I was still doing that. And I was in the National Guard at the time too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, one of the
I'm a classic workaholic.
Yeah, no kidding.
One of the things that I was really excited to talk about was the publishing Hall of Heroes, your brand, your publishing company, because it is one of my favorite things in comics to find Hall of Heroes books and collect Hall of Heroes books. I'm a big Ethan Van Sciver fan from way back in the day. I love Trent and Matt's work also. And Hall of Heroes, I remember being a kid going into the comic book store, and there was one book that still to this day I remember, and so vivid that from being a young kid, and it's a teenager, and it's this book right here.
Oh yeah, Creed #1.
Yeah. Sent me off in this path to find a lot of my favorite, characters, artists, creators. Hall of Heroes was just such a great brand to me. Can you talk about the beginning of it and why you decided to get into publishing?
Absolutely. In fact, it started at my comic book store. So Hall of Heroes came out of, I did like a local talent search contest in my comic book store. And I said, okay, I kind of put it out to customers, and I said, hey, you guys, do a comic book. And so I had my customers vote, and there was like 5 comic books that were submitted. So my customers all voted, and I said, hey, whichever one gets the most votes, I'm going to publish 500 copies and do a signing at the store. And that was Matt Martin with Vortex was #1. Trent Kanuga was in 2nd place. And keep in mind, Matt was 16-year-old kid and Trent was 15-year-old kid. They went to a local high school here, Memorial High School in Elkhart. And that's kind of where they started. And so we did. So now there's 2 versions of Vortex #1. This is the national one. The local one is black and white, the whole thing, the logo as well.
Wow.
And it doesn't look like that's showing on there.
No, it must be. Those are the type of things that I love to hear about, Alan, because, as comic collectors and comic fans, we're all fans of the hunt. That's what I like, the treasure hunt, right? And hearing these things that I didn't know that there was another version of Vortex.
Yeah, so the first version, there was only, so I said I was going to do 500 copies. I did 1,000. And so a couple of things I decided to do because there was such a demand. And so those 1,000, we sold 700 of them in like a week.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. Right. So then I checked into distribution, everything. Of course, this time there was 4 distributors. There was Diamond, there was Friendly Franks,
Capital.
What's the other one? There was 4 at that time.
Right.
In like 92, 93.
Yeah, 92 would have been Capital.
Chat, let us know if you remember too.
Was it TriStar? No, not TriStar.
No.
Heroes.
Is it Heroes
World? It might have been Heroes World. You might be right, Dennis. It might have been
Heroes World was, exactly. Yeah, Heroes World.
That's right. So
I was trying to think of all the ones that got absorbed in 95 and 96.
Right, exactly.
I'm pretty sure Heroes World was there.
So then what I did is, one of the things I did in the newspaper industry, I was a marketing manager. So then I'm like, okay, let me figure out how to make us stand out. So our first 6 months, I did all the covers black and white, so they stood out in the newsstand. And I only did the logo color.
Right.
So that way they stand out on the newsstands.
Makes
sense.
They
get attention.
Yeah.
And it worked for 6 months, and then our reputation started kind of picking up, and then we started doing full color covers. But if you get our earlier books, they're black and white just with the color logo the first 6 months of the company. Yep. The other thing I had going is all my staff, the artists and everybody were all under age 18. So that got us like some national press. And then we were making sure we were standing out in the stands. And then we did a lot of shows. And I really put on my salesman hat, and I'm going around to every vendor with like a stack of Hall of Heroes. Hey, do you have a shop here? Try this book out. You got a shop here? Try this book out. And so I gave away a lot of books. Just really, instead of staying at a booth and let people come to me, I went out to the dealers and the vendors, and I was out talking. I would have those guys sitting at the booth for me. Yeah. And then I would go out and talk to people.
Well, you had huge outreach.
And that's what you got to do. You got to market yourself. You got to promote yourself.
Yeah.
So publishing wise, you would have these, kind of what we used to call the mile high ads, but you've solicited dealers in your comic books and you had dealer pricing. If I can't really see there we go.
Oh yeah.
5 or more copies, 75 cents each, and then it just kind of goes down all of your back stock. You were almost doing a Diamond Previews catalog in every issue.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And that's brilliant. There's just so many things that innovatively you were doing that no other, just the fact that you had this little call to action here,
right?
Support alternative publishing.
Yes, that's a big deal.
But that's huge for that time, though, Alan.
Yeah.
You have to understand that.
It was. There's, I tell you what I tell people is I say American Idol stole ideas for me because, they do like this talent search. Well, that's what I did in the comic book industry.
Yeah.
Because like the Hall of Heroes, that was the third thing that I did that was unique, was the Hall of Heroes Presents title became a national talent search. So every issue was the first appearance of a new artist, a new character.
That's
amazing. What
amazing.
happened is it went beyond national, went international. And at one point, I was probably about 1995, 1996. I'm getting submissions from Russia, from Israel, from all over the freaking world. It just exploded. And that was about the time that DC and Marvel started cherry picking my guys.
So
then we got huge. And in 95, I was Small Press Publisher of the Year by both Fan and Combo magazine.
Wow.
Wizard kind of snubbed me, but whatever. They're not around anymore now anyway.
You weren't paying them enough, Alan.
You're right, exactly. Well, I couldn't afford their ad rates. It was so expensive to advertise with those guys.
One question I want to ask you. So between 92 and 95, do you think your drive was a lot more because of the competitiveness with so many independent people out there, with the arrival of Image, the arrival of Valiant? So did that up your game? Do you think it would have been different before that was pre-91?
Well, we came out a year after Valiant and Image. They came out in 91, 92. We were 93. So we were kind of behind them. But we had some unique things, and I kind of had to look at what we could do uniquely. So the under age 18, the black and white covers to stand out. And we did all gloss. So we did black and white, but we didn't do newsprint. If you look at our books, they were all gloss.
Yeah. They're
the
beautiful.
Early ones were. Yeah, the early ones were. And then it got expensive to do that. So then the later years, we had to cut that back a little bit. Yeah, Bog isn't going to be gloss inside. That's going to be newsprint.
Yeah.
But it was like our first couple of years. But the guys got better and better. If you look at like Trent's stuff, his first Deadpool stuff, that's terrible compared to what he did 2 years later with Creed. It was just a huge leap. His style changed. Everything was like,
but you were putting all of these 15, 16, 17-year-old kids together, and then all of a sudden one would probably pick up from here and one would pick up something from over there. And before you know it, just like Image and the Image Revolution, everybody was raising everyone else's game.
Exactly. Yeah.
By working together and being kids and not being.
Well, and Vortex was obviously was a Christian version of Spawn, basically. That was. You could see the Todd McFarlane and Matt Martin's early work easy.
Oh yeah.
His style totally switched when he went to Snowman, which was a fantastic book. In fact, that
favorite
was our highest selling book that we had in like 9 years of doing it.
Yeah, Snowman.
And it's still selling.
Snowman Snowman and Cyberfrog, of course, were my two favorites. I remember seeing, the Trent Kanuga cover at first, the Creed book, but then seeing this right here and the Cyberfrog stuff. I still have, to this day, my original issues that I bought, when I was, 15 years old. And from what was it at the time? What was that store, Jesse, on Thunderbird? Heroes Comics.
Heroes,
back in the day. Yep. This cover right here is such a great cover. Matt Martin. What do you think about Matt Martin just putting out new Snowman stuff? What are your thoughts on that, if you don't mind me asking?
I haven't seen any new stuff in a long time from Matt.
He just recently released a new Kickstarter.
Snowman 1, Snowman 1's released already, and 2 is being solicited now.
Is he doing that online or
Kickstarter? Kickstarter
through
crowdfunding.
Okay. Right. Yeah. See, I don't follow a lot of Kickstarter, so I wasn't aware of that.
Right.
Yeah, he's
actually
one of
the only
those guys.
Kickstarter I did. Ethan just did last year the action figure sets.
Cyberfrog, yes.
The Cyberfrog. I did order a set of those. because we do have a Hall of Heroes exhibit, and I wanted those action figures for the exhibit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this was the Matt Martin Kickstarter. It was called Snowman: A Cold Day in Hell. He did it under Ethan's publishing.
Ethan's got a huge following because he's broken like all the Kickstarter records with Cyberfrog. It's insane what he's done.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Published a lot of the Hall of Heroes stuff.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a very interesting question now that I'm thinking about, because I was running a comic book store at 12 years old in 1982. And you were talking about having these kids that are 15 and 16 years old on your staff. How did you educate those kids? Because weren't they growing, right? Creating egos, and how did you manage all that?
It gets tough, because you're dealing with young kids, not mature yet. They have expectations that, hey, I'm going to be the next Todd McFarlane, I'm going to be the next Jim Lee, and that was their expectation. So when things started to happen, of course, DC and Marvel started offering these guys money that I couldn't even touch. And so, they jumped ship very quickly.
Yeah.
And so, that was kind of like, and I did that for several years, just trying to replace them with other talent that was coming in. And in fact, there's industry people that I've met over the years that have said, hey, your Hall of Heroes book, your talent search is what got me thinking, hey, I've got a chance.
Yeah.
Josh Blaylock was one of the guys that
had him on our show here.
He applied for Hall of Heroes, and I turned him down. And Josh and I are cool with each other, and Josh will tell you that rejection made him work harder and become better. And that's the thing. Josh is a great storyteller, but when he was young, he wasn't that great of an artist. And he brought this book called Minotaur that I loved the story. Absolutely loved it. And he self-published it himself, a few years later. And I was trying to get Matt to draw it. And Matt's like, well, I don't have time. So I was trying to get him an artist because I wanted to do the book. But I couldn't find an artist to do the Minotaur story. And his art just wasn't, his writing, absolutely excellent. But his art just wasn't up to the quality level. So Josh was one of them that kind of, somewhat came out of Hall of Heroes. Another one is Tim Seeley.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Tim, it was funny. First time Tim Seeley and I met probably 10 years ago. And Tim was like, we were at Northwest Indiana Con together. And, I had the Hall of Heroes booth for the museum, and then he was there. And, and he came up to me, he goes, hey, do you have anything to do with the old publishing company, Hall of Heroes? I said, yeah. I said, I was the publisher, blah, blah, blah. And he said, he goes, I would go when I was a kid, and we would go on family vacations, and I would always stop at comic book stores to try to find Hall of Heroes comics. He said, I was a huge fan of your books back in the day. I mean, and Tim is huge. He's one of the biggest guys at DC as far as writers. So that was just so humbling and flattering that not only did I directly influence the guys that worked for me, but I indirectly influence other people that are big in the industry now. And that feels really good. That not only preserving the history, but I've contributed in other ways to the industry. People that may not have ever become a comic book artist, or Tim Seeley may not have entered the business if it wasn't for Hall of Heroes. Josh Blaylock may not have ever gotten in the industry. And then, of course, Trent and Ethan and Matt, none of those guys would have probably entered the industry if, I wouldn't have got them started early and pushed them and prodded them and got them the opportunities.
Well, it's rare that the seed you plant is supposed to grow a tree that you'll never see the shade from. And it looks like now, 30 years later, you're seeing the shade.
Right, exactly. I think it's because I started so young, because I was when I started Hall of Heroes publishing, I was 23 years old.
Wow.
Nice.
And we became a force, and I was doing things that wasn't happening in the industry. I mean, there's these things that I started that just, other people have done years later, but I kind of started it.
Well, you started at a really good time, but you also started at the worst time because
I did. Yes, the 90s is the worst decade in comics.
Well, yeah.
I want to
tell us a little about that.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Hold on, Dennis, because you brought up something that I want to talk about, Alan. That one of the things that I want to know more information about. So one of my favorite comics or one of my favorite brands, I've already said it, or characters, is the Cyberfog run. It got me into Ethan at a young age, and I followed Ethan's art throughout the years. Green Lantern Corps and everything he did with Jeff Johns is my favorite comic books ever. Yeah. And one of the things
so let me interrupt you, Brian. So just as you're talking about him and Jeff, okay. So Ethan and Jeff brought back Hal Jordan from the death as a favor to me.
Wow!
Because I was a huge Hal Jordan was my favorite Green Lantern, and
Mine
Ethan
too.
Knew that.
Yes.
And so that's kind of why they brought him back is kind of like a thank you or kudos for me, which is amazing. They did a fantastic job on it. So sorry, I want to throw that out there.
No, I wanted
kind of brought it to my attention.
Well, Rebirth and Kingdom Come are my two favorite comics of all time, storylines of all time. I just geek out over Rebirth, and of course I geek out over almost all comic stuff. But Rebirth is one of the books. Those two books are the books that I give to people, and I go, here, read this. You need to read this, okay? And one of the things that you did though that I don't know if you did it, who did it, whose idea it was for Cyberfrog. There was this cool gimmick thing where you offered these extra pages that were censored pages for collectors to send in and get these extra pages. Was this you that did this, or was this Harris Comics that did this?
No, that was Ethan. That wasn't us. That was probably the Harris run.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't us.
Okay. Then I apologize.
Hold on, though. I have to tell my Ethan Jeff Johns origin story. So when Kevin Dooley, who took over DC and basically made Hal go crazy and kill all the Guardians, and I met Kevin Dooley at a local Detroit convention, and he had zero answers for young geek Dennis, who was absolutely in love with everything Green Lantern. I'm like, well, what about John Stewart? He's a Guardian. Why can't he go challenge? Oh, because he gave up the power and decided to join the Dark Stars. And he just crushed me. That it was just like this corporate decision to just do away with the entire lore that I loved. And my business partner was on Jeff Johns' message board at that time, which was like a big subgroup of dorks, comic dorks. Right. And he was like, hey, there's this story that Jeff Johns just bought all the back issues for Green Lantern over the last 10 years, and that he may be picking it up for DC. And at this time, Bob was a huge JSA Jeff Johns fan and Flash Jeff Johns fan. And he's like, I think they're going to reboot Green Lantern. And I'm like, well, this is probably the best time to open a comic book store as any. Let's do it. And we opened our store, Wonder World Comics, around the relaunch of Rebirth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And it was because Jeff was doing it and Ethan was the artist. And I actually bought a page of that book from Ethan the month before we opened the store.
Oh, nice. You still have it?
No, unfortunately, it got lost and in one of the warehouses. And then it got accidentally sent to an auction house with a bunch of other original art. And I saw it on the thing and I was like, I'm not going to shill bid my own piece. It's gone.
Alan, what you said you're a huge Hal Jordan fan, and I want to ask, what were your feelings when they decided to do all the stuff they did with him and kind of turn him into a villain? And
I wasn't a fan of the whole Parallax thing. I just didn't really like it. And while we're kind of talking about that, a lot of people kind of complain about the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds.
Yes.
And I tell people, because people ask me about it all the time about the movie, because we actually have Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern ring at our museum.
Wow.
Yeah, which is cool. So I tell you, I was a Green Lantern fan. So when the ring went up for auction several years ago, I ended up buying it. We also have Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool mask too from his other role that he wore in the first Deadpool movie. So we have two Ryan Reynolds screen use pieces, one from each hero. But the big problem with the Green Lantern film is where they ended it.
Yes.
And where they were introducing Sinestro. That should have been the film. Parallax should have been a later film.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds did a great job as Hal Jordan. It was just the story was terrible. The script was crap.
The Hot Wheels track was stupid.
And I thought
it was. They should have done the Sinestro Green Lantern. That should have been the first movie.
Yeah. Was his name Mark Strong?
Mark Strong, one of the best
he did a great
comic
job.
book bad guys ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
They just
once again,
did that so backwards. It was crazy.
The decision from DC and Kevin Dooley, as the editor-in-chief at that time, to just do away with everything Hal had built up, during that period of time.
Right.
It was just so disingenuous, but it was what the entire comic book industry was doing. And they thought, oh, we're going to get all these new characters. We're going to get this kid, Kyle Rayner, and it's going to be Ron Mars's Kyle Rayner is going to be the best thing. And within 10 issues, the thing was a dead book, and the industry implodes within 2 years of all these stupid decisions.
Right.
And I was one of the people that walked away. I literally dived into back issues of Green Lantern and never read a new Green Lantern after that until I opened my store, and then Rebirth got me back in.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Kyle Rayner is not my least favorite Green Lantern. I mean, I kind of like Kyle. In fact, my son's name is Kyle Allen Stewart. So he's named after 3 Green Lanterns.
That's great.
I wanted to do Hal, but I couldn't. Hal or Jordan didn't combine the sound right with any of the other mixes. And so my now ex-wife, I gave her the name. I didn't tell her where it came from because she hated this stuff.
Oh, right? No.
And so I threw the name out there, and she liked it. And then I told her that's where I got it was from comic book characters. She's like,
Jesse and I can relate to ex-wives that hate comics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is for sure. It's kind of funny listening to you for the first time. You're going on 46 years, right? 46 years of collecting.
45, 46.
45, since 1978.
Yeah.
When you're storytelling, how much of it do you feel is more personal versus historical?
It's at this point, it's kind of hard for me to separate the two.
Yeah.
Because I've done this so long, and I've become one of the foremost comic book historians in the industry. So it's almost like I'm kind of like the keeper of the history, or the keeper of the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With the museum, because the museum is, it's like one of my kids. It's my baby. It's my child, because I've spent 45 years amassing the collection, archiving the collection, and sharing it with people over the years. So it's just like, it's kind of my identity at this point.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for me to separate the two.
Yeah. Do you have plans of doing any type of maybe, I know these are big these days, like a traveling museum with pieces of the collection? Do you take pieces?
I've consulted with other museums. So like a year before last, the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in California contacted me. They did a Secrets of World War II exhibit, if you remember that from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a 6-month exhibit, and they wanted to have comic books. And I think a lot of it's because I've been going around the circuit at universities and Comic-Cons, and I have several panels that I do. I do panel lectures. I do comics in World War II, comics in the Cold War, EC horror comics in the 50s, Seduction of Innocence. I talk about all that. I do history of Saturday morning cartoons, which is a very popular one because Saturday morning cartoons have been extinct for 20 years. If you think about that, And then I do one on collecting, and I talk about collecting and appraising. So I talk about my work I do for American Pickers, and I talk about, there you go, yes, the history of Saturday morning cartoons. Grand Rapids, that's one of the cons. I do both of their shows every year. Mark, the promoter, is a very dear friend of mine. We promote each other's shows and stuff. And so, I'm doing panels all weekend for Mark at Grand Rapids in April and November.
That's awesome. That's super cool. I think that's one of the most important things. And we talk about it, us three, all the time on this show. And when we're talking to each other about how there's this, one of the most important things about comics that I think is lacking with a lot of the new creators in the big publishing, DC, Marvel, is I don't think they have the knowledge of the history of comics.
They don't.
Yeah.
That's why they keep doing all these reboots.
Yeah. Well, speaking of
that's
that,
one of the things about comic books is the entire medium is about legacy. It's about passing down legacy. Mm-hmm. Every origin story has a father to son connection, or and that's one of the most. And just your origin story, your father handed you a comic book when you were 8 years old. My mother put change on the table and said, "Go across the street and buy a comic book."
which is this Batman issue right back here. You know, it's a legacy, and everybody who's into it understands that legacy. And when you start to break and chop that legacy up and you pretend there is no legacy, you're literally severing the roots of the tree that we're all trying to live under.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, probably, the vast majority of the comic book owners, comic book shop, comic book collectors are guys our age.
Yes.
40s, 50s, and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, I think you're probably maybe a little younger than that. You at least
43.
You look like you're younger than the rest of us.
You hit it right on the noggin. 43. So
okay, all right. So 40,
and
50,
I agree
60.
with you.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's
43
just,
to
it
60.
just, so it's like for us, the fans, continuity and the history is important. It's adamant. Don't screw with that. And it annoys the crap out of me when that happens.
Well,
when they do reboots, the New 52, I hated the New 52. Oh, I hated the New 52 with a passion.
So, it's kind of funny that you brought up war comics, World War II and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right now, war comics are my number one selling item, followed by horror. And I've always wanted to ask someone, I'm going to ask you this.
Yeah.
1940s, 1950s, are comic books more directive patriotism back in the day versus storytelling? Does that make sense?
They were, because, the golden age era of comics, if you go back and read any of those comics, the storytelling was terrible.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was confusing is that you had all during, especially the World War II years, you've got all these war covers, but that's not the story that was inside. The cover didn't match the inside story during the golden age. So, I mean, there was just, there wasn't a lot of continuity in the golden age. That didn't really start until like silver age that you started seeing continuity start to happen, because you didn't see a lot of it in the golden age. It was like one-shot stories,
one-shots,
continue stories. That stuff didn't happen in the golden age. There was very little villains. You had mad scientists, you had mobsters, you had but you had no true supervillain. I mean, one of the first supervillains was Black Adam.
Yeah. And one of the first things you had to do at the end of the story was the bad guy had to be punished, and by most accounts, he would be destroyed by his own monster.
Right, exactly.
So that was, I think that became part of the comic code, was that the bad guy couldn't win and move on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, I tell you, as far as the golden age era, there was only one company that was really great at actually focused on the storytelling and the art, and that was EC Comics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we probably have about 15 original EC books in our collection. Not a lot. But I've been getting like the Dark Horse collected editions, and those are great for $20. That's a great value. I've got all of them that have come out. And who is the guy that still stand the test of time? I love reading those. Every time they come out with a new trade, I'm grabbing it.
Yeah.
Who was the guy that took all those old ECs and put them into those blue slipcase hardcovers? And he would do them. He was reprinting them, and he was putting together. It came out in like the 90s and early 2000s.
I know what you're talking about. I'm not sure who did that though. Yeah,
but it was one guy. It was one guy who went and he would make each issue as a big oversize, and then sold those to people to pay for the printing of those pages. And then he would make the hardcovers, and then he'd make the slipcases, and he put everything back into print. And that guy needs a trophy or something.
Well,
absolutely. Because no doubt that influenced Dark Horse to do it today.
Yeah.
Well, there was just recently a heritage auction by one of the that just happened. Of course, a big original art. Yeah, and that was by a longtime collector of EC comics and stuff like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I was following a couple of those pages because I wanted to get one for the museum's art collection, but man, those went salty.
Oh man!
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
the EC art was just—it's crazy. Well, we just bought. With those 3 Netflix costumes we just bought. So we're a little cash poor right now because those were cheap.
One of the things that I love about the heritage and the legacy of comics is guys like yourself with the Hall of Heroes Museum. I'm from Michigan, so we have the giant Michigan State University collection, which has been curated. It's got classes on it. It's one of the biggest collections in the area. And now, Brian, I don't know if you have that queued up, but Golden Apple Comics has donated his collection to his old college.
Yes.
And and of course, Steve Jeppy donating his collection to the
Library of Congress. Yeah.
Library of Congress.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just think it's important. Is this, you got the audio on that?
No, I'm just going to let it play while we're talking.
Oh, okay. So we'll just talk. Golden Apple Comics is a huge store in Los Angeles. It's one of the surviving stores, and the owner of it has decided to donate his entire collection to his alma mater, this guy right here. And it's just a huge offering to get these comic books, our heritage, our legacy, for old guys like us before we move on, to basically keep this stuff alive and have it accessible to people.
Yeah, in a big way. And get a big tax write-off at the same time, right?
Well,
right.
That's a nice little bonus.
Well, and we do that. We do, people donate collections to us all the time, and we do tax write-offs, for that. We're one of the few places that people can actually donate a collection to and get a tax write-off because we are a 501c3 and nonprofit.
Right, sure. So I walk into your museum. And I know this is going to be a hard question, and I'm trying to figure out how to word it the best way. What is your pride and joy? If you were to take me to a section, what section would you take me to?
Boy, that is hard. So it really depends, because the one thing when you first walk into our museum, the first thing people see is the 9.5 foot tall Incredible Hulk right there. So that's like the wow factor when people walk in. They see that full size Hulk statue and they're like, holy criminy, and he's pretty huge. And then they see Reb Brown's Captain America costume that you see here on the photo. That's his screen used one from the 79 film, and Adam West Batman costume. That is my favorite piece in the museum.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is Adam West Batman. I think that's the coolest thing we have.
I agree. I haven't seen the museum. I haven't walked through it, but man, this right here is pretty awesome.
Now, are you that you see a bit of that photo to the right, that big painting? So what that is the Batman TV show from the 60s was the most expensive show to be produced in the 60s. The Batcave, different sets. So that painting, that's production painting. And you see on the edge, you can just kind of see Batman and Robin climbing up the side of a clock tower. And then Burgess Meredith is on a penguin coming around the side of it. So what that is an original. So they do and you guys have seen like simple storyboards for cartoons and movies and things like that, right? They did big elaborate paintings. These were the storyboards for the 60s TV show.
Oh, wow.
So this is one of the original storyboard paintings for the Batman TV show. And when that popped up in the auction, people didn't know what it was.
Wow.
And so I ended up getting it for like the minimum bid.
Wow.
That's one of the most famous.
It's a gorgeous piece. It's a gorgeous piece.
Yeah, Jesse, what do you got here? Let's take a look. Nice. Oh yeah, old school poster.
Yeah.
Yeah. We one of the
UK version.
One of the coolest things about that series, me and my brother, when we first found the 66 Batman show and movie, I think there was probably a summer or two where we would rent that from the local video store probably once a month and just watch it over and over. Yeah. And then Nick at Night happened and they started playing the old school TV shows.
But Brian, I gotta stop you. Alan, Jesse, and I all lived in a world that when we got home from school every day at 3:00.
Yep. Right after school, that's that in the mid 70s. That's when I watched it. Exactly.
And so we had that all week long, episode. And I think depending on what station you were with, they would either run them back to back or they would run them episode, day after day.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we got that all week long. And then on Saturday morning, we had Adam West doing the voice on the Justice League.
On Super Friends.
Yeah. With Ted Knight to be in the Joker.
One of the coolest things that I remember from the show is one of the funniest moments to me is this moment right here. Whenever they're crawling up the building or whatever, and Bruce Lee will jump out. Yeah,
Right.
or some other.
Yeah, you have a different celebrity pop
Sammy
out.
Davis
Exactly,
Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the first show that probably did cameos.
Yes.
I mean, if
Yes.
you think about it,
it was so earth-shattering that everybody grew up on Batman, but they didn't know a way to express it. The TV show was the first way that our culture those people all grew up with from the 60s, so they would have grown up in the 40s and the 50s reading Batman comics, and now all of a sudden it's on a TV screen. You can actually see it. And at the same time, these guys are all pop culture icons of their own right, and they wanted to be a part of it because they loved Batman when they were kids. So they were calling up the producers of this going, hey, I'll be on your Batman show. And they're like, well, how the hell are we going to shove this guy in? We've already got Cesar Romero. We've already got Burgess Meredith. And they're like, oh, we'll just pop a cameo in.
Right.
Yeah.
But
smart.
I mean, everyone wanted to be a part of it. And it's so much like the world we're in now where everybody wants to be in a superhero movie. You got Glenn Close just, I'll take whatever part you give me. I'll be in one of your Marvel movies.
Yeah, for sure.
So my favorite villain on the Batman TV show was King Tut.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was like my favorite villain on there.
That's funny.
I love the guy who played Mad Hatter. And I don't know who that actor is, but he was just so weird.
I don't know that actor's name either, but no,
with the mustache and the eyebrows.
Too.
Oh, he was just
Egghead was really good too.
Yeah. I mean, who can't love Vincent Price?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff is great. And again, what we're talking about is the history of this hobby, this world, the pop culture comic world. It's so important, and to me, that's probably your biggest and best hat that you wear is keeping this history alive.
Absolutely, yeah. Because what I tell people, we're like, I described the museum. We are like a two-fold time machine. Not only do we preserve the history, as a nonprofit, as true historical work, but we take you back in time. So you've got like the grandparents and the parents bringing the kids in, thinking, oh, my kid or my grandkid loves superheroes, but they enjoy it as much, if not more, than the kids because it takes them back in time to their childhood. Right. So like the grandparents, they gravitate towards, because we have Clayton Moore's Lone Ranger costume and we have Adam West Batman costume. So those are things that they grew up with. Or they'll see the exhibit we have for like Flash Gordon or Tarzan or Zorro or the Lone Ranger, that's the stuff they remember, and so, we appeal to everyone. It doesn't matter your age range. We, kind of feel that nostalgia and take you back and make you feel like a kid again. And that's what people really love about our museum and their experience there.
Yeah.
Well, so Alan, what is the rule, or if you have a rule, what makes something historical?
That really depends. That really depends on perspective in your own age. Okay. So for me, I think anything is historical. I'm thinking more of the golden and silver age era of comic books are to me historical stuff that predates me. So anything pre-1970, the start of the Bronze Age, is historical. But for like Brian, he would consider the Bronze Age historical because that's before his time. But for like the three of us, I'd say that, you and Dennis probably both agree with me because we're all of the same generation.
But then
the Golden Silver Age is historical. The stuff we grew up with, that's not historical. That means we're old.
Did you ever get a chance to see Jeppy's Entertainment Museum in Baltimore?
Yes. I did some consulting for Steve.
Okay.
He had me out. They had a new curator several years ago, and he asked me to come out and help him, kind of. It was one of the things that Steve did such a great job. But I love that museum. That's what I wish I had his deep pockets. Yeah, because my museum could be so much better.
See, but where you just said you and I and Jesse would start it in the Golden and Silver Age, Steve started it with Yellow Kid and the
Platinum
Civil
Age.
War comics, and I'm like, and I could walk through that. I have no cultural attachment to that. I have no clue what any of this is. But
we just got in. You kind of talk about Yellow Kid. We just got in a comic that predates that, and one of my board members picked it up. Steve Beaver, that we were talking about earlier, he's from you guys' neck of the woods. He picked up. It's an 1880s French comic book And it's like the first comic book, but I can't remember the name of it or anything, but it was from France.
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
I love that stuff. That to me, that's part of the hunt is to find those things. The first, I mean, we being comic book fans, we're always looking for those.
I got a Holy Grail toy piece that's really cool, and you guys will be familiar with this: the Superman Sirocco statues, the wood ones that came out in 1942. Now, do you guys know the history on that piece?
I don't.
No.
So it was never available for sale to the public. So DC put these out, and they only did 100 of them.
Is this it?
Nope, not that one. That's the ideal one. That one was available to the public.
Okay.
This one we just got in a few months ago.
Okay.
It's only about 5.5 inches tall, maybe 6 inches, but it's made of wood. Came out in 1942. So of course, World War II, there wasn't new toys being produced during the war years anyway.
Yeah.
Because all the toys at that time, right before, were tin toys.
Yep.
So DC made 100 of these little wooden Supermen and sent them out to the top 100 retailers or newsstands that were doing action and Superman comics.
Wow.
So 90 of them, and you guys have seen photos of these probably online, where they're wood and only the logo and the cape is red, right?
Right.
Well, apparently 10 of the 100 were done in full color.
Wow.
And I just found one at the Great Ohio Toy Show in April.
Wow.
And I got it. And I've only been able to track down I've only been able to find that there's 3 of those that exist today that I've been able to find or track down. And so we have one of those 3.
Wow.
So I got something very cool since you brought up Superman.
Sure.
So this is a 1966 marketing booklet, right, for the Superman show. And not only do I have it with all the clean pages and all that, we actually have it with
George Reeves' autograph?
Breakdown of all the cities and
nice.
the numbers they got. So there are stuff out there, folks. If you're looking, that you're going to find cool stuff that you'll never find anyplace else.
Yeah, I don't have one of those.
Yeah, and so it's crazy when I hear your story about that. I'm like, man, I got this and all that stuff. So it's so cool because we get to hold stuff that we might never see again, and I think that's the cool part of that.
Yeah, I tell you, because I've always done the King County Chicago Toy Show every year.
Yep,
and
I got my start there.
I find cool stuff for the museum there, but some vendor friends of mine. So you guys are Michigan. You guys probably know Lauren Becker.
Well, I'm Michigan. They're Phoenix.
Yeah. Okay, so you probably know Lauren Becker.
Oh yeah, Lauren's a good friend.
Yeah, Lauren and I've been friends for years.
Yeah.
And so Lauren told me, he's like, hey, you need to go to the Great Ohio Toy Show. So I went for the first time this year, just 2 months ago in April, and I found that Superman piece, which was a major holy grail. I also found one of the 60s bat phones in box, which was like really cool. And I found one of the Ideal play sets in box from the 60s. Right. And the same dealer had all 3 of these pieces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he took all my money. I'm like, let me just give you my wallet.
that is so funny that you bring it up because we had a couple things. Actually, Dennis had a couple things. You go to a table and you see something at this convention. Are you a fanboy buying that, or are you more in the historical mode?
Both. I think it gets to be both. Yeah.
No, it's both. Absolutely both.
But here's the question.
There's no separation for me on that.
Right. Do you communicate that to the seller? That's the question.
Well, so here's the thing that works for me is because I know almost all dealers, and if I don't know a dealer personally, they've heard of the museum. And so we usually get pretty good deals on stuff because if they know it's going to the museum, it's become part of the museum's collection, it's going to be shared with the public, they like that.
Right.
And so this guy, knocked down the price on those 3 items pretty substantial for me because it was going to the museum. So
okay, sure.
I play that card all the time. I ask for, because we're nonprofit, we're charity, sure. So, and I'm not some millionaire guy, that has endless amounts of money. So, I always ask, for a donation or a disc, I always ask, it doesn't hurt to ask, if somebody's familiar with what we do and what our mission is, and if they can afford to do it, they're happy to do it in most cases.
Alan, cool. I think I saw a picture of you with a classic car, a Shelby Cobra, maybe.
Yeah.
Are you a Shelby Cobra fan? Do you own a Shelby Cobra? What was the deal with that?
Oh, that's the car from the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's the car that, when Robert Downey Jr. flew into space and his armor froze and crashed to the penthouse and landed on the car. That's the car. And it was actually donated to us by Richard Rawlings from the Fast and Loud Car television series.
And
we were on an episode of the show.
You had that set up at Wizard World Chicago, and I gave a $20 donation to lie in that spot and get a picture taken.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we own the car. It's at the museum. We own that car. We also own Nicolas Cage's Hell Cycle, the Ghost Rider motorcycle from the first film. And then we have a replica Batgirl motorcycle.
Wow.
Right
That's
over
cool.
just by Adam West's costume.
Well, we were talking about how being comic book fans, we're always looking for that first. And the reason I bring this up is kind of to talk about how we're always looking for those first. My mentor, I used to work in space and defense, and my mentor who taught me everything over there was a huge Shelby Cobra fan. He owned an original Shelby Cobra, and he was always, working on it. And I remember thinking as a comic book, fan, I said, man, I want to find the very first time the Shelby Cobra was ever mentioned in anything. And I found an old car magazine where it was the first time the Shelby Cobra was ever announced. And thinking as a comic book fan, I thought that what a great gift that would be. And the reason I tell that again is just to kind of go back how we're always looking for those treasure hunts. We're always looking for those first things. Is there anything that you're looking for that is not necessarily like super expensive and you haven't had the money to buy it? Is there anything that's so rare that you just haven't found it yet?
I tell you, one of the big books that's on my want list, it is an expensive book. Marvel Comics #1, because we had Captain America #1, we had Young Allies #1, the Marvel Comics #1 would just be the trifecta to have all three of those together. Wow. That would just blow people away.
One just sold.
Alan. That's way out of my price range.
I was going to ask you if you're the buyer.
I tell you what, funny thing is, so in Wizard World Chicago, probably 7-8 years ago, ran into a vendor. He had a restored Marvel Comics 1. It was CGC a 6.0. He had $50,000 on it, and I wish I would have bought it now. In hindsight,
sure.
Because that was a great deal compared to today's market.
Right.
But do you remember a time when Marvel Comics #1 was actually coveted more than Action 1 and Detective 27 by a large segment of the collector market?
I do not.
I just remember hearing stories about Marvel Comics #1 being the book to own back in like the late 80s when you would see like Good Morning America talk about like a big comic book sale. And
I guess for my whole time of collecting, it just seems like Action #1 was always the most sought after. And then Detective 27. And then I've always viewed Captain America #1 as #3, first Superman, first Batman, then first Cap. Those have been what I've always figured the top 3 books.
Yeah.
Right.
One of my favorite cartoons is the Venture Brothers, and they had an entire episode with Marvel Comics #1. It started as a CGC 9.8, and it gets broken open and read, and every time something happens to the book,
I saw that. Yeah,
they show the value going down till a dog.
The
Hitler dog rips.
Yeah, it's like that was like disheartening to watch that. Yep,
I know it's difficult.
No, I watched it. It was like no.
Yeah. Well, I
was
think
a cartoon copy of it.
Sure. And the great thing about comic book stores in the 80s, that's where you went to get your news because we couldn't get news anyplace else.
There was no internet back then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, your eBay rack was the rack at 7-Eleven. That was your eBay rack, right? Exactly. So 80s was a great year. And historically, I think that will be a very good moment in time for the comic book world. It's about 80 through about 87.
Oh yeah, Secret Wars came out, Crisis, I tell you what, so in the 80s, there's a book series that is so underrated. And I still can't believe that it doesn't get more attention than what, people don't even know about this. And Contest of Champions.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. That was Marvel's first limited series. People don't know that. People do not know that was Marvel's first limited series.
Yep. First limited series, and as a 12-year-old, trying to explain to people why this only went to 3 issues and what was a limited series. That was
hit everybody. It was the first time Marvel had every character in one story.
Right. And then they realized that they could actually do 4 issues, and they started doing Wolverine and Hawkeye. And
because everybody thinks Wolverine was the first limited series, but it was Contest of Champions.
Contest of Champions.
And I remember picking it up at like a local grocery store on the, the classic spinner rack, and that's where I got it. And that was the first series that I made sure that, because I would get a book here, a book there, but I would never like complete stuff back at that point in time.
Sure.
Because, that was about a year before I got my paper out. Then I was starting to buy everything. Once I had my paper out money, I was buying every book.
Sure.
But back then, my dad would give me 50 cents here, 50 cents there. But that's the first series that I got all 3 issues when they came out. Yeah. I made sure I didn't miss any of those. So that's the first series I actually focused on was Contest of Champions.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Well, we've kept you for the entire hour and a half, and before we let you go, I want to tell you that a couple things. One, I have one more book that's on my search for list because there's already a it's going to be the second Hall of Heroes book I'm adding to my hunt list.
Okay.
That being that Vortex #1. I love to collect firsts, creator first, publisher first. So I'm going to be on
black and white one though. Right?
Yeah, I'm going to be on the lookout for that. But I got to tell you, one of the books that I've been searching for the longest time is probably not. I don't know how what it is on your list. But this book right here, The Fuzzy Buzzard and Friends,
Fuzzy Buzzard is a hard book to do because we did that book, but Ethan, before he started working for me, he was doing children's stories for this guy I think it was in New Jersey. And when Ethan started doing comic books for me, he said something to Ethan. He's like, "Hey, I want to do my children's characters as a comic book." So we did the Fuzzy Buzzard comic for this guy. And I don't think, I'm trying to remember, I don't think Fuzzy Buzzard ever went to comic book stores.
It is one of the rarest books on the market.
It's tough because we printed the book under our logo and we sent all the copies to this guy who hired us to do it.
Yeah.
And where he distributed them from there, I really don't know, but I don't think it ever went to the comic book stores. It was never in previews or anything.
You need to put
I kept 5 copies for myself.
There you go.
So I have 5 copies of it in our archives. Well, at least I think I do. I have to go back and look.
Have you ever kept an eye on the secondary market sales of Hall of Heroes books?
Not really. I kind of, the Cyber Frog, I know that's, those are over $100 each.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know those are because of everything Ethan's done with the Kickstarter and the figures and, so everybody's, because the original print run was only it was under 5,000.
Wow.
So there's not many of them out there.
Well, that Fuzzy Buzzard book that I just show you regularly sells for $200 to $500.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In any condition.
I think we only did 3,000 of that book.
Well,
that was the print run because when we were doing print runs, that was the minimum. We had to print at least 3,000. So, and I think that one was done the minimum. I think that only had a print run of 3,000 for that book.
Well, so let me get back to my question, and we had to get sidetracked several times.
Sure.
So you literally come up at a period of time where anything you put out could sell, especially if you're putting out quality books. Right. And then all of a sudden, 96, 97 comes, you're still putting out quality books, but the stores evaporated. The customers started evaporating. Yep. Tell us about that era of time and how you basically said, okay, I'm going to pull the plug on this.
That's pretty much what there's a combination of things, Dennis. Our print runs are going down. my best guys were getting, stolen from me from DC and Marvel.
Yep.
So it was a twofold problem. So, I was getting hit with the market hit like everybody else, but I was losing my A-team talent to DC and Marvel, which I couldn't compete against. I was doing print runs of 3,000 to 5,000, and they're doing print runs of 100,000. So, they got deeper pockets. They can pay these guys. They really didn't make any money with me because we were kind of breaking even, honestly. I mean, we were one of the top 10 small press companies, but none of the small press companies were making any money.
Yeah.
Even the guys in the top, I wasn't making any money, which is the other reason I had to quit. And part of it was, this is a little more personal, but in 97, I had lost a child.
Oh, sorry.
And so I had funeral expenses, things like that. I had a 3-month-old daughter who had died from SIDS during a nap. And so, had the funeral expenses, things like that. So that was part of the reason too. So it was 3 different things that kind of contributed to me to kind of stop publishing.
Yeah.
And that's when I got a estate license, started doing real estate, making money, because I just got into a lot of debt with the funeral costs and things like that. And, obviously wasn't planned, wasn't expected. So that was kind of where I kind of got out of it for a while, focused on, building up my real estate, business. That was going well. And then so then 7-8 years later, 2007, I decided to do this crazy thing and build this Hall of Justice, a church for all of us nerd geeks, and now we are 17 years later, we're a much larger location, twice the size of our original building. And we're just, it's going great. People are loving it. We get visitors from all over the world to come see our museum.
Well, we can't thank you enough, Alan, for coming on here and spending your time with us tonight. We all know how important our time is, and thank you for joining us. We absolutely.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It was great talking to you guys.
Yeah, well, we absolutely love.
If you come up Friday, send me a message what time you're going to be there. If I'm available, I'll stop by and see you.
I will. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for everybody out there, check the link below. It's very easy to search Hall of Heroes. If you're anywhere in the area, make sure you stop by. Tell them that Beyond Wednesdays sent you over there, and check it out. It's worth the look. And for all you Hall of Heroes fans out there, also, I hope you guys enjoyed this little history.
I have one last question, though. I have a stupid question. Do you have a YouTube channel?
We have a YouTube channel, but we haven't started really cranking it out yet because I'm a historian, which means I suck at technology. So I'm trying to find somebody to kind of work with me to get this YouTube channel started and going, because there's so much history that we can share, and I've got all these celebrity stories and just there's so many. I have a lot of knowledge and content that I want to share, and I think that's the best way to do it.
Absolutely.
I need help getting there.
Well, if in the future there's anything that I can help you with, I would love to help you there, and definitely keep that on your head, because more people need to hear your stories and the history of comics too. So thank you so much, Alan, for joining us tonight.
Oh, hey, thanks, guys. It was a pleasure meeting you guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Alan Stewart of Hall of Heroes. That was absolutely amazing.
No, absolutely. Here's the thing. I was so giddy just through that whole conversation. And I think one of the pleasures of doing this show is not only introducing the world of YouTube to our friends, but also to meet new friends.
Yes.
And Darren Davis 4 weeks ago, and now Alan Stewart. These are 2 people I should have met in the last 30 years. And hopefully I have 30 more years to build relationships with them, because these guys are amazing and incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that you find, me and Dennis have done this for a long time, you get kind of grounded in this type of conversation because, here's someone else that knows even more. So now to encourage us to actually learn more and be that gatekeeper and learn how to represent this comic book history in a more expanded way, I guess.
Yeah, more broad way. Yeah. Well, Jesse, one of the things that we talk about a lot between all of us is how much social media and the internet and technology has changed, not just everything else, but comics. It's amazing the change. We see it across the board and how items are bought and sold. We see it with creators. We see it with how creators, put their art on display or create their art, whether you're writing, you're drawing, what it is, painting. It's all changed so rapidly in the last couple years, which is amazing. And we have our next guest backstage, who is one of those people that has really jumped into that whole new technology thing and is doing a great job of it. Jesse, why don't you introduce our next guest?
Right. So the next guy I've known for 15 years, and I would define him as Mr. Level Up. He just continues to level up and pivot to how the industry is going, but also creates his own lanes that he's doing in the industry. So a very good friend of mine, Ryan Kincaid, very awesome dude.
What's going on, everybody?
Nice to meet
How
you,
doing,
Ryan.
Ryan.
Yeah,
nice to meet you guys. Dennis, I've seen you many times, but I've never actually got the pleasure of.
Yeah, we've met in passing at multiple different points in time. We have so many of the same friends, but I don't think we've ever sat down for a drink or ate meals together.
That's that con life.
Yeah, I know, man. Let's change that in the next year.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
and Jesse, like you said, I've known you forever. Since I started, I've known Jesse.
Jesse, tell the story about how you guys met. Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know what? What's funny is Arizona is a little bit different than most countries. Well, we'll say most countries. But in the comic book industry, there's really this big community of. The best way to put it is no one is ranked in these groups, right? It's your guy who's never drawn before to your Brian Pulido's and all these guys all hanging out together. And I kind of knew Ryan just from hanging out at after parties and being with these huge groups. I just put a picture up and just realized Ryan was in it. And it's like 30 of us at a bar. And I don't know where it's at, but it's 30 of us as a bar. And so we kind of grew up in this more of a community, strong, gets you to the next dance. And you get to network and you get to work with people that you're like-minded with. And that's kind of the community we grew up in. So it's been kind of this great ride. And I'm so proud to know Ryan because every time I see this journey, it's just amazing how you continue. Remember that?
That was Vegas. That was Las Vegas.
There you go. That's Las Vegas, and that's probably like 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the group I always grew up in. And it's kind of strange because I think I was really only the retailer in that group that would go to these things. So just a great ride. And I think that's what we want to bring you on to talk about that ride. And also this new stuff that you're just leveling up big time on.
I'm trying. What's funny is you mentioned Arizona. Yeah. In the hub there. I have no idea why. Maybe it's my connection with you. And, that's kind of the shows that I started going to the most because my friends were there. Everyone associates me of growing up in Arizona. They're like, oh, you're one of the Arizona guys. I'm like, dude, I'm from Los Angeles. I was born and raised in LA.
That's how it works sometimes.
Every time I go somewhere, they're like, you're from Phoenix, right? And I'm like, Nope, I'm not.
Well, I like to talk about this, and we just talked about Keith Pollard earlier. There was actually a giant contingent of talent that kind of cultivated in the Detroit area, and that was where Caliber Comics started. That's where the Paninis started, ElfQuest, little things like that. And you're sitting there going, "What happened?" Well, Detroit had the Detroit Triple Fanfare, which was the first big convention started by a lot of huge comic book names. And immediately they started inviting all this talent to Detroit. And these people were finding people like Jim Starlin, Keith Pollard, and Mike Netzer. And they were like, oh, hey, why don't you move to New York? and they plucked them all from the Detroit area, and they all became New Yorkers. Only a handful of them, like Keith Pollard, came back when they kind of tapped out of the industry in New York. And then the second thing happened. They all started having parents that were older and all wanted to move to California and Arizona. So they all went to California and Arizona, and we lost them all then.
Yeah, that's the way it works. That's the way it works. Ryan, tell us about your first experience with comics. What do you remember your first experience with comics?
Man. So I went in and out of comics since I was probably 7 or 8. You know, like most people, I'm not going to say most people, but the people that I knew, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't, you know, our parents worked 2 jobs, or, you know, we're always gone, whatever the case. I remember my dad came home one day and he handed me this book, and he knew I liked drawing. He's like, here, maybe check this out. And it was one of the Secret Wars. And it might have been like the whole Secret Wars set, because I remember having them. And I just remember being a little kid, like seeing, you know, I knew who Spider-Man was from cartoons and other things. But then I got the book and I'm like, oh, you can, like, this is where it all came from. Like, these people are telling these stories. They're drawn. To me, it was the arts. Like,
yeah,
they were drawn cool, like the action shots and this and that. So I would randomly get comics here and there from my dad, probably from 7-Eleven down in LA. Like, he would just pick them up on the way home from work, because he worked the graveyard shift. So in the morning, I would get like a new comic book every once in a while. I was the only kid that I knew that was into art and into comics. So for a long time, I didn't have anyone to talk to any of that about. We didn't go to comic book stores because we didn't have one near us. So comics kind of fell out, but I was always drawing from what I did have. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, the sneaky Lobo cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jack.
I tore those books apart as a kid, learning how to draw comics. And then I fell out of it just because, you know, teen years, was doing sports in high school and everything else, still drawing. I got really into it with Joe Madureira and Humberto Ramos. Basically, like when the Cliffhanger came out, like I was still reading X-Men and stuff, but when Gen 13 and all that stuff started to pop up, like a new style of comic books was introduced, I was like, oh, what the hell is this? Like, this is different. And then I got really involved. I still didn't read a lot of them, but I studied how these guys were drawing to the part where the pages were falling out. I've spent the last like 5 years since I've been collecting, just finding all of those old books that I used to have that I learned to draw and getting them. Like, I don't care the condition, I just wanted them back.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of creators kind of go through that same thing.
Right.
I either hear that that's what they do, or they just don't care at all, you know, which is very weird to me. We do, or I do a thing here at Beyond Wednesdays. Every time that we have a creator on, one of the first things that I try to ask is a question that not all creators love to talk about, which makes me laugh, but us collectors love to hear it. What was your first ever published work in a comic book?
Oh Lord! So are we going published, or are we going
published,
like a bigger book?
Well, I want to know published.
Jesse will definitely remember this one: Zombies versus Cheerleaders.
Yeah, we just had Bill McKay on last week.
Yes, Bill, myself, Mike DeBalfo, Elias Chetsoudis, a lot of the guys that are like our friends. We all kind of got put on those books at the same time. Like, Mike was already doing stuff with Zenescope when I got in, but then he jumped over and started doing these Zombies versus Cheerleaders books as well. And it was the weirdest things, because I started off with doing the Marvel sketch cards for Mark Irwin.
Oh.
And then they got, like, somebody hit me up, and it was probably Steve Frank, doing the sketch cards he did for Mandy, the Dean Eagles Mandy. And after I did that, he's like, "Hey, do you want to do a comic book cover?" I have one on my wall. Like, I have the very first one still on my wall.
Nice. What was that? It was Zombies vs. Cheerleaders. What do you remember? Which issue it was? I want to
say it was issue 5. I think issue 5.
So the reason I ask is because I have a living list. If anybody wants to check it out, it's in all the descriptions. It's in the link trees and all of everything I do. It's a living list that is every creator's very first work. So we just added you, Ryan, and this will help Ryan Kincaid fans out there find those great collectibles that we always search for. And it's funny because, I say that it's something that not all creators love to talk about. No. What do you feel about that first work? Yeah.
So I'm going to say for me, it's still really cool. Again, I have one hanging on my wall. I have my wall of heroes, after listening to Alan in his museum.
Yeah.
I have my wall of heroes of graded books that are my favorite covers or my favorite books or my own published books that I've done for Persuasion or con artists. But the number one on there, I think most of us don't like talking about the first one, because if you look at that book, that cover compared to what we do now, you just want to ask, like, why did you ever hire me? Like, why? And thank you for giving me a shot, but what were you smoking that night?
Oh, it's crazy. It's funny because I've done so many covers with just about everybody, but Mike would say, "This is my best cover ever," and I'm like, "Okay, so it's better than the last one you did for me." He's like, "Yep," and the next one I do is going to be the best cover ever. You guys just always are saying, "Okay, how can I just go that next level up?" Yeah. Do you find that what inspires you is being better on your own art, or you see someone else that inspires you to be better?
I'm going to say with me, it's a little combination of both. I've always, I always want to get better. You don't want to get stagnant and kind of hit that stride where you're just, okay, this is what I do. This is what I'm known for. And I'm just going to ride that highway until the toll road closes. I've always wanted to just keep going. I started in animation. I was trying to become a Disney animator. And I met Dan Penosian, and Penosian was like, you should try comics, kid. You'd probably be better off in comics. You got to, a knack for it. So I switched over. And then going through all that, I've learned, okay, this didn't work. This worked 10 years ago, but it doesn't work now. You're always learning new things with your friends or with people you idolize. One of my big, and it's still the cliffhangers, dude. My holy trinity is Campbell, Madureira, and Ramos.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've met all three. I can say 2 are great friends now. Madureira, he doesn't show up a lot, but I got to meet him. He's a very nice guy. I watch how my friends and my idols continually level up, and they progress, or whichever way they switch styles out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, where the hell did that come from? I didn't even know you could do that. So I've always okay, I'm comfortable with what I do, but now let's get uncomfortable again, because then things kind of change. But I see, like you said, Mike, I've watched Mike almost his whole career, and from what he used to draw to what he draws now, I'm like, it's night and day. So
well, and Ryan, it's always angered me that artists do this with themselves. It's not good enough. When you watch that Dave Stevens documentary and you hear about all the pieces that he threw away because it just wasn't, and you're like, no.
Yeah.
But then it didn't occur to me until you just explained it that way. That's almost where Jesse and I both are as comic retailers. We're so bored with doing it the way everyone else does it that we're trying to reinvent what we do and kind of our narrative and our meta into something different and new. And then when you piece it together with, Alan from the previous segment, you're like, that's a guy who figured out, this rat race sucks. I can't do, I don't have the time to do this. this is great, but the industry implodes. And then he's still got the itch. And 7 years later, he's like, no, I'm going to do this other thing that the industry really needs, and becomes Hall of Heroes. You know, and I'm just so inspired by that. And I finally understand what angers me about artists is what angers me about what I do.
Right. It's you never want to kind of settle with good enough.
Yeah.
I've been taught that by lots of guys that I admire. It may not be perfect, but it's good enough. Well, can't always stay. Like a cover won't be perfect, but it's good enough. But your style is always going to change. Like
I would have settled for good enough from Frank Miller on that Wolverine.
Well,
cover,
Ryan, it's funny that you're talking about
this. He was nowhere near good enough.
It's funny that you're talking about this because there's this new big story out with Jim Lee buying back an original piece of artwork. Yeah.
Yep.
And as artists,
I saw that. I was interested in that.
Yeah, as artists, it seems to be that you could always make your work better, and there's got to be a point where you say this is good enough, like you said. Does it take somebody else telling you, or do you have to cut it off yourself? Because a lot of times, sometimes it takes somebody else saying, "Hey, man, that's really good. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to continue on it."
Honestly, I mean, except for an editor, the only other person that sees what I'm working on is usually my wife, and she's my worst critic. Shannon is very vocal on, like, her arms look wonky, or babe, her butt's not big enough. Like, you drew her with a flat butt. So, to all the females that come by my booth and say, why are her boobs so big? I always tell them, because my wife said, go bigger.
I'm reminded of one of my favorite scenes in one of my favorite movies is, and rest in peace, Donald Sutherland, is 6 Degrees of Separation. And he's telling the story in it about how, when he visits his son's kindergarten teacher, and he's looking at the art that the kids did. He's like, my God, you've made my son a Maté. You've made my son a Cézanne. How are you turning all of these children into master painters? And she's like, well, I just know when to take it away from them.
Right. And that's kind of the thing I've learned. It's hard. It's really hard working on stuff. You just keep going. There comes a point where you realize if I just keep messing with this, it's actually going to get worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to get jumbled. So you just kind of stop. You just go away. Come back in a couple of days. Unfortunately for me, I don't usually have that much time. So it's come back the next morning and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm good. I'm done. Like, this is it.
Well, it's funny you say that about having enough time because one of the things that's a pretty good constant on the show is whenever we bring artists on, they're always working on something while they're doing the interview, which is amazing. And it's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. We love it because we see you doing your craft that we love. What's that like with these time periods that you got to get something out? And do you work on multiple projects at once? Is it just
always? It's weird for me because I hate saying no. I love drawing. I love drawing everything. So when somebody comes to me with a project, unless it's something that there's really no upside for me doing this, like, I'll actually go backwards for doing this book or this project or whatever. I don't say no. I'm like, I'll fit it in. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. You're too nice.
No, I like drawing. Everything's a challenge. Everything's a challenge.
Well, I think what he's saying is all of the challenges seem enticing until you have to accomplish all of them, and you have to kind of like stop yourself at a certain point.
Yeah. Yes and no. I still need to learn to stop myself at a certain point. There's just some projects in the indie world that if somebody randomly hits you up and they're like, hey man, I'm doing this book. It's about a baby with 5 dragon heads. We think you'd be great on it. And it's one of those, I don't even know what you're talking about. Right. Like, I don't know how I would even fit into that category for you. Thank you, but no thank you. But I'm doing projects right now with different groups of people. And let's say last night, I have an iPad at home if I'm at home and we're not doing something, I'm drawing.
Yeah.
I'm drawing from when I wake up to basically going to bed, unless my wife tells me, hey, we're going to a ball game, or we're going to the movies, or we're going to a friend's house. I'll sit there and draw for 12, 14 hours out of the day. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. No, finish what you're going to say.
But I have an iPad, so I'll go through and lay stuff out. I got an email last night like, hey, we're going to do this project. We like your idea, run it. And my response was, can we? Because the due date for concept was today. And they're like, yeah, I think we can if we fly. So I busted it out in like 20 minutes, like really, really, really rough, but busted it out and was like, hey, here's the concept, turn it in. I don't want to be late. And I do all that on my iPad. I'll do 5 or 6 layouts until editorial's like, yep, that's good, go. And then I get to work. And the next day could be, yep, that one's good. So then I'll get to work on that one as well. I just kind of shuffle back and forth. I watched J. Scott Campbell do that one time. He's like, yeah, when I get tired of this project, I just pull this cover out and start working on that one. And when I'm tired of that one, I go back to this one. Yeah.
So my question was kind of in that realm. Your bio says you're a penciler, you're a writer, and you're a publisher.
Whatever I gotta be.
Yeah, exactly. So is everything in that moment, or do you have some type of time management that says, listen, I got this project, I'm a publishing house now, I need to really focus on that? How do you manage that time?
I tried kind of balancing throughout a day. Done enough. I was like, okay, in the mornings I'm gonna warm up with sketch covers and remarks commissions or whatever, and then in the afternoon I'm going to answer messages, and then mid-afternoon I'm going to start working on covers, and then at nighttime I'm going to write. Luckily I have my wife. My wife has taken over a lot of the talent portion of our publishing side. She hires like the cover artists, and she gets scripts together that I've written to, if I'm not drawing it, to somebody else. Before that, man, it was just a jumbled mess. She'd have to ask me like, hey, how's issue this coming along on the script? I'm like, oh crap. All right, hold on. I gotta get in that mode. I just kind of bounce back and forth based on deadlines now. It's like, what's dire? What's got to be done first? Some days I just don't feel like drawing, which is very rare. And that's when I start writing different scripts. And by the time I'm done with those, I'm like, oh, I need to get to work. I need to start drawing this cover. It's due like in a week or whatever the case is. So I don't have a balancing act. I just kind of go for it. Like whatever I'm going to do at that moment, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. You just, speaking of the book by your side that Jack brought up, this gorgeous Lobo cover, you posted this a week ago saying your first cover back with DC Comics.
Right. And to answer Igor's question, I'm going to say that one right there. That's probably my favorite cover that I've done, the issue.
Yeah, that's amazing, absolutely amazing cover, and I'm really stoked for this. We just talked about Lobos the other day on another show on the channel, and how he's one of those characters that I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't love what he's about in the comics.
He's the main man. He's the without cursing.
Hey, you can curse on here.
Okay, he's the best badass in comics. You know what I mean? Like, he's everyone's favorite badass.
Yeah.
Like, and he's the only person that's going to punk Superman and no one cares.
Yes, and it happens multiple times. Even recently, he was part of that. So this is absolutely beautiful. But another image that we talk about a lot on here that people bring up all the time is this, and we recently had we recently had Darren Davis and Sean on, and it was our introduction to Darren Davis and how amazing he is. He's just a real breath of fresh air. But this series that they put out through Tidal Wave, this Taylor Swift book, and all the variants that it did just blew up on the secondary market in comics.
It went crazy.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. What was it like drawing this and being part of this? Because you're a big Kansas City Chiefs fan, obviously.
Right. So I don't follow the trend. Like, I don't really ever do anything because this is what's going to be, this is where the money's at. I did that because 2 of my nieces are huge Swifties, enormous Swifties. And I live in Kansas City. So it would be dumb for me not to.
Yes.
I thought Ryan would have said TMNT, black, white, and green. Remind me to tell you about black, white, and green.
Oh yeah.
It was dumb for me not to do the book. I did it because my niece like heard about it and was like, Uncle Ryan, like, you got to do Taylor. You have to do a Taylor. Which is again why I also did my own variant for myself of Travis Kelce, because I'm in Chiefs territory. I've never done any of the other ones because, you know, it's like, this is what's going to be hot for the con. This is going to be it. It just happened to be, why not? One of those why not moments. And I honestly, the portion that I got from that, I've given so many of those away to little Swiftie fans.
That's even better.
I've probably sold less than a quarter of what I should have, because I'm not going to charge a little girl $20 for her favorite book, you know, her favorite person. I just give it away. We're doing a charity show, and they asked if I could bring them, and I was like, oh, the Cancer Kids charity, it's Voices Against Cancer. I was like, I'll bring them all, and we'll just put them on a table. They can have them. Like, every kid that comes in can take one. I don't care.
That's awesome. That is great. Well, not only that, you made a friend of ours, a friend of the channel's day at a recent con when you signed one to Ronnie. Happy birthday.
Ronnie.
Yeah, Ronnie.
Ronnie, yes.
Yeah. So shout out to Ronnie. He's in the chat tonight, and he's a big fan. We're big fans of Ronnie over here on Beyond Wednesdays. He's been supporting Beyond Wednesdays for a long time. So this was super cool, and to see this. How often are you signing books? Happy birthday to Ronnie. It feels like that doesn't happen very often.
Not often. Every once in a while, I get the person that says, "Can you write it, you know, to me?" Which I'm happy to do whatever. I did a lot of the Swiftie ones, like to somebody's niece or happy birthday. It's fun, you know they're going to keep them. I mean, I had high school friends that I haven't talked to since high school. Like, we've kept each other, you know, you talk as much as like you
Facebook
like
people
on Facebook. But she reached out and was like, my 2 daughters are huge Swifties, and my son is a huge Chiefs fan. Can I buy those covers from you? And I was like, I'll just ship them like to you. I'm not charging your kids. And wrote like a note, like, she's a cop, she's a CIS agent, and so I wrote, like, just so you guys know, like, your mom is a badass, don't forget. And they're okay, now I know you're cool because this comic book artist said my mom's cool.
Yeah.
Street cred.
Street cred.
You know what's funny, as I'm listening, since I've known Ryan for so long, how are you still the same person? Traditionally, what we see in people in this industry as they become known, you know, I was just reading, you know, about private CGC signings with Ryan Kincaid. How do you stay level-headed?
Dude, I'm a big kid. I can't ever take what I do seriously. I love what I do. I love comics. I love drawing. I love the industry. I draw superheroes and pinups all day. Like, how I can't take myself that seriously to where I'd have an ego, you know, like crazy. If you could see the rest of my room right now, it's full of toys. Like, I have books and toys all over my office. Like, my friends growing up, they weren't in comics. They don't understand my world. I've taken them to cons and stuff, and they've sat with me, and they just sit there and laugh, and they're like, dude, you're just Ryan to us. Outside of a convention, like, no one, they may know our art, but no one knows who we are.
Right.
You don't get stopped at an airport. Like, you're Ryan Kincaid.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's funny you should mention that. So, Bryan, I don't know if you have my Facebook accessible. So yesterday was the 28th anniversary of me being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Millions of copies of this newspaper printed. I did over 200 different newspaper interviews. It was republished around the world. I got letters from Italy, all of that. I did probably 100 radio interviews, including some really big DJs on the circuit. And I did like 10 or 20 actual TV interviews, like 48 hours and that kind of shit. I'm nobody.
That's I was about to say, who are you?
I mean,
like, wait a minute.
That's huge coverage, and I still can just go. I mean, I get more recognized from this show than I did from that, for sure.
Yeah.
And you can still be anonymous and be the biggest thing in our little fish pond.
Yeah.
J. Scott Campbell could literally walk around anywhere but Comic-Con and no one would know who he was.
I've seen him walk around Comic-Con and no one stopped him.
Actually, the funniest story I have is I was staying at the Omni one year at San Diego, and on the elevator with me coming down from my room was Robert Kirkman. And I said hi to him, and I'm out having a smoke, and Robert is walking up to Comic-Con. This is literally 2011, 2012, when the entire outside of Comic-Con is Walking Dead. Yeah. Every pillar going up and down on the sides of buildings are these giant Walking Dead murals.
And probably no one stopped him.
This little girl with a clipboard is walking next to him, and they're just moving, and nobody's recognizing them. The train stops. There's 300, 400 people surrounding him. Nobody knows him. They walk up to the steps of San Diego, and security is there. No one knows who he is. And the little girl forgot his lanyard. So she has to tell Robert Kirkman to wait out in front of Comic-Con. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, I got to see how this ends. Oh, this is too funny. And so she goes in to go get his badge, and like maybe 5 or 6 people are like, hey, Robert. He's like, oh, hey, what's up? He's literally the king of fucking Comic-Con, the most recognizable comic geek in the world at this point. And
no one recognizes him.
No one knows who the fuck he is.
Yeah. My dad had an entire conversation with Kirkman and at Phoenix.
Yeah.
One of the years you were running it, Jesse, when they had the big Walking Dead stuff. My dad had a huge conversation at my booth with him while I was away, and I walked up, and Robert was walking away, and I looked at my dad, and my dad doesn't know who anyone is. And I was like, Dad, who are you talking to? He goes, oh, that guy and that guy. I'm like, the really, really tall guy? And he goes, yeah, the guy that looks like a rocker. And he goes, yeah. And then the guy that's walking away with him, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
All right, seriously? And he's like, yeah, why? Who are they? I was like, well, one of them's Mark Silvestri, who, and that was Top Cow was still, golden.
Yeah.
And I was like, the show Walking Dead that you were watching? He goes, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's the guy that created it. He goes, oh. They're really nice guys.
Yeah.
Well, the first time I met Kirkman was at Wizard World Chicago. Might even be that same Wizard World Chicago Hall of Heroes that I met Hall of Heroes Shelby Mustang. And I'm digging through long boxes, and this guy just had stacks of long boxes on little shelves in his booth. And I'm on a ladder looking through long boxes, and this little dork next to me is like, oh, cool. There's some McFarlane Hulks in here. And I just heard him say that, and I'm like, oh, actually, you know what? There's a whole half a run, one aisle up from you and one over, because I had just picked through that box. Yeah. And up pops Kirkman, goes, really? And starts digging through that box. I'm digging long boxes next to Robert Kirkman. Meanwhile, I get down off my ladder, and I'm paying for my books, and the comic book guy behind that was whose booth it was like, Mr. Kirkman, I'm such a really big fan, and Invincible's like my favorite series. And he's like, oh, cool, man, thanks. And it was just Robert Kirkman just digging through some long boxes, and he's just one of the most. You want to talk about humble success, not changing somebody? It doesn't change Robert Kirkman.
No. So I'll tell you my story real quick. So I'm at San Diego, and I cannot find my pass. So I call Big Clutch, Sean Kirkham. And I go, dude, Big Clutch, I need a badge. So he runs out. He goes, here you go. So the whole con I'm shopping, and people are just staring at me, the whole con. And so someone says to me after about the 10th table, he goes, I thought you were kind of taller. And I go, no, I've always been this height. And he goes, well, I just don't picture you as this person that created Walking Dead. I'm like, what are you talking about? I own Just James Comics. Well, he had given me Robert Kirkman's badge. So every table I was at, everybody's looking, saying, that says Skybound Robert Kirkman. There's no way that's Robert Kirkman. So that's my Robert Kirkman.
Hold on. So you're the reason why we have to show ID now.
There you go.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah.
That's it.
Well, before we get into this next spot, it sounded like it could be a perfect time for Unfiltered Time. So I'm going to run our Unfiltered Time thing and then ask about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Black, White, and Green. So one second, guys. Here we go.
Yo, let's do this.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
I always agree. So tell us about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Black, White, and Green. It looks like an amazing project that's recently started. I think they're on like 2 or 3 now.
I think 2 just dropped, maybe.
Yeah.
I was on It's Drunken Chat, and I think we were looking at covers for FOC on 3. So yeah.
So 2 just came out.
Yeah.
We're working towards 3. Okay. I didn't actually get to read. That's the Jod Shah.
Oh, beautiful. I mean, all of these are gorgeous. I haven't read any, but I've seen the covers. And one of our commenters put in the chat that they said that you would be perfect for this project. Do you have anything that you can add?
Is Jesse on?
Yeah, Jesse's right there.
Jesse, are you in Arizona or Florida? We're all curious.
I'm in Florida right now.
Okay. We were talking about you, so we were trying to figure out what state you were in.
Yeah, I'll be back in Arizona in 2 weeks. So
Ryan,
where
you got a letter
in the world is Jesse James?
Right.
Ryan, you got to tell your wife that she has been getting nothing but great comments in the chat all night.
In the comments.
Praises.
I'm getting praises.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Behind every good man is a good woman. So
That's funny.
Shannon is awesome. A very, very good person in the comic book industry by far.
Aw, thanks. I just got off of a podcast, so I appreciate the kind words. I'm a big pain in the ass, but I appreciate it.
So the Turtle Black, White, and Green. Same group of guys. Like I'm doing a bunch of stuff with Jack DeMeo. And he's been really great with me on just hooking up different variants and everything. Cause like I said, I like drawing everything, and he is basically he's doing his own thing with a couple other partners, outside of their normal realm of selling. And he's like, we just want to be able to do what we want, not this company's exclusives. We want, to do these things. Do you want to do Archie? And I'm like, yeah, I've done Archie before. Let's do some more Archie. How about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? And I jumped. I was like, dude, I've done one. I did one years ago. And I snuck Kevin Eastman into joining on with that with me. Simplest thing for him to do, and he still got credit for the cover. I really just had him do a remark of a turtle head, and I imposed it onto my cover as graffiti as 4 different turtles.
Oh, wow.
And then my cover was Casey Jones and April O'Neil in an alleyway, and then there's Kevin Eastman headshots behind it that look like spray paint graffiti that he did real fast.
Nice.
So for San Diego, he and I were sitting there, and he got to sign all these books. He's like, this took me 10 seconds. Ryan did everything else.
All right.
But Jack, asked about turtles, and I was like, dude, I'll do turtles till I die. Like, what do you want to do? And he'd said, there's a new series coming out. Jason Aaron's writing it. We're going to do those, but we're also going to do this black, white, and green. And I was like, well, what's that? He goes, the whole issue is black and white. The cover's going to be black and white and green. Like, those are the only colors in there. I was like, all right. So I did this piece. Cover came out dope. FedEx lost the entire print run of our cover.
Oh my God. That is heartbreaking.
I was so stoked. Yeah, I was like, dude, this will be out like in June. I'll have it for this, this charity show I'm doing. It's all kids. They'll like turtles. We'll have it for San Diego. We'll do this. We'll do that. And they messaged me that they lost the print run, but we'll keep you up to date. We'll keep going. So like 2 weeks later, they're like, yeah, we've already filed the claim. So FedEx says even if it ever does pop up, they're just gone. They'll be destroyed because they had to pay. They had to pay for it all. Oh. I got a notification that I was getting something in the mail from IDW, and I was like, tell me that they didn't accidentally send my address for the whole print run. Like, I'll be stoked. I'm not that lucky, but at the same time, I am that lucky because what did come in the mail were my comps, which of what is now the only 2 issues.
No!
Of this book that ever exists.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it's here, black, white, and green #1, and I remarked the crap out of them. You can see, like, I put Turtles in April on one, and I remarked Raph on the other, since there's only going to ever be 2 of these that exist. I was like, I'm going to get them graded and, at least hold on to one forever.
Yes.
Did they LTD it on the CGC?
I don't think so, because there's technically the print run is whatever the print run is. Whether they made it to public or not, it's still printed. At that minimum. I just have the only ones that will ever behold.
Well, and the thing is keep an eye out, because you never know if somebody accidentally got those. If you start seeing them sell,
right? Which is why I'm still holding on to them, and I didn't instantly put one on eBay.
Right?
Sure.
Because I've had people ask me.
Yeah, I had that happen in 2016 at San Diego. My Power Rangers 11th cover came out, which was always funny because I had this connecting cover set, but I had 11 covers. I'm like, Ross, I don't think you can connect 11 covers. But anyways, that's another story. Well, it hit San Diego, and I'm not going to say who had them. He gets the box. I hand him the long box. We turn around, the long box is gone. We have never found those 11th covers in our history.
Wow. See,
waiting for one person to put one copy out. And so it does happen. In this case, it's someone stole it. But yeah, it's crazy when that happens.
I had FedEx lose a $3,500 signed lightsaber in China in February of 2020, and FedEx refused to do an investigation or acknowledge that it was lost. They were just like, oh, COVID happened. We don't have to do anything now. Yeah. And it was just like, poof, $3,500 just disappeared. And I'm like, what?
Well,
it was wild. I didn't there's nothing that we can do. Like Jack said, we've been skeptical of if they're going to pop up, which is why we're just holding on to them for now. Plus, I think it's kind of cool. As of right now, it's still cool. The only covers that we'll have. We are getting them recolored and resubmitted for like a normal TMNT issue, but that black, white, and green, unless they magically pop up one day, like that's it.
Yeah, poof.
Well, the Turtles. You mentioned Dan Panosian earlier, and one of my favorite artists.
Talk about his cover. That cover's gnarly.
Absolutely beautiful.
And
one of the most
like
beautiful covers.
Big, dude. I saw the OA. It's huge. It's huge.
It's absolutely gorgeous, man. And this is the new series that you're talking about that's coming out with Jason Aaron. So this Dan Panosian cover is gorgeous. But you also have, where did it go? A cover coming out.
I do.
Oh, wow.
And this is...
Look what shirt I'm wearing today.
Purple Rain.
Purple Rain now, and I got a little bit of heat on that one because it's not Donnie.
Yeah.
But IDW is very specific on everything that you put on a turtle cover has to be associated with the right character. Donnie does not ride a motorcycle.
Oh, that's crazy.
The only person that rides a motorcycle is Raphael.
That
and
respect
Raphael
to
just
them.
happened to be for number one.
Yeah.
So, boom.
Yeah. Respect to them for knowing that and keeping that continuity there. What would be cool is you could always just remark this and change.
That's what I said online. I was like, just bring it to me. I'll paint that shit purple for you. Not a problem. If you're that upset about it, I'll make it purple rain. Don't worry about it.
Wow, that's a great.
That one knocked out of the park, man. Sean Lee, who was one of Alan Qua's colorists, he's been doing a lot of covers with me, and he really just nailed the atmosphere of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the most iconic album covers of all times.
Right.
And
one of the things that Jack has really been on the ball with throughout the years is the variant game. And I think that's something that he knows very well. He knows what people like, what people want, and he works well with artists to get those good covers out there and get that good art and going. And this is like you said.
Me and Jack work great together. It's a Ryan, do you want to? And I do. And we just go. And they either say throw us an idea, or they've already got their idea for me, and I'm like, even better, let's rock.
Yeah,
like let's just do it all.
This is great, man. So when is this going to be hitting? Is it available for sale right now?
No, Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say we're dropping that at San Diego Comic Con.
Oh, that's going to be amazing.
Wow,
that's awesome.
Yep.
We have a number of different things we've worked on together that will be dropping at different shows with each other.
Yeah.
And they are all such fun projects that thankfully Jack has trusted me with, and I didn't think, unless I did it on my own, which we can get into that as well, I would ever work on some of these titles.
What do you mean by that?
So the variant game, that's what's exploding comics. It's going to be the bubble that pops. I love the variant game. A lot of the actual books that I buy are the different variants because some of them are better than what is like on the normal print run.
Yes.
And it gives artists work. What I have noticed over the last few years is retailers are chasing the same thing, the same look, the same concept, the same styles. A lot of stuff has gone to the digital painting or the hyper realistic. So it's for guys like me that are traditional artists, it got a little harder to find somebody to pair up with. That's like, hey, let's just do this cover. I haven't done DC in 4 or 5 years, probably. I think it was the last time I did one. And I was approached by another retailer that was like, hey man, I'm going to do this thing. I'm already doing a whole bunch of covers, so I don't need any more. But if you want to do one, do it on your own. Like, you can do it on your own. I'll help you. I'll pitch it to DC. I'll do all the logistics and all the back work. You pay for it. It's your logo. It's your book. I'll send them all to you. So a lot of my career in the last couple of years is me kind of betting on myself.
Yep.
It's hard to have somebody else do it, and just doing covers solo. Until these guys jumped in and were like, hey, we want to do all this stuff with you. Because for a guy like me, I can sell some books, but getting 1,000 covers of anything for me is like, what am I going to do with 1,000 of these books?
Well, you're talking about something that's very it's a big topic, and Beyond Wednesday's the channel right now. We've been talking about it a while. I've talked about it with these guys. Haven't really had
Christopher.
Yeah, John Tyler Christopher. He's about the only guy that I've had the chance that's an artist to talk about this with, and it was very interesting to hear him talk about it. So I'm going to ask you, there's this thing going on in comics right now where retailers are taking old covers that were hits, right? Like
facsimile editions.
Yep, and not necessarily facsimile, but like hit covers. Like what's a good example of the John Tyler Christopher Wolverine yellow? Okay. And what they're doing is the publishers are offering that as a retailer exclusive variant, right? And they're letting retailers reprint that and sell it as a variant,
like the Mexican foil editions of
and my thing,
cover.
And my thing was always like, that feels so wrong. It feels like that. I mean, it's okay if the artist who created it passed on that option first, but I feel like DC and Marvel and Image and all these publishers, they need to ask the artist that created that image first if they want to use it in their, because you guys are becoming retailers now too.
The big one was the Adam Hughes Harley Quinn one, wasn't it?
Right.
Well, that was the big one where Adam Hughes was like, wait a second.
Yes.
I do variants with you.
Yeah.
If this was an option, why didn't you bring it to me first?
Yes.
So my thoughts on that is I'm going to exclude these big guys because I know it happened to Adam Hughes.
Wait, hold on. Can we go unfiltered on this?
We already did.
We already did. We're already in. All right.
We're already in.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good, Dennis. I've seen this podcast. Like I know what you are doing. I studied too. Minus your guys, John Tyler Christopher, Adam Hughes, these guys that their primary work has been through the industry, through not through the publishers themselves, not through retailers, not variants. X them out of the question. Guys like me really can't say shit about it. Most of us started in the artist alley at cons doing fan art and prints of Spider-Man and Batman, and hey, I can draw Spawn too. So to me, it does suck, but it's almost like the publisher's going, you guys used to do this shit all the time, we're going to do this shit.
I get you.
Used to sell unlicensed.
Do you think they're
prints.
That petty though? Do you think
no.
they're that petty?
I don't think that's what they're really
left hand,
doing.
right hand.
Yeah, I don't think they're really doing that. That's just how I see it. Like, am I really going to bitch if Marvel, if I did a cover for, XYZ shop and Marvel is like, fuck yeah, let's put that as a foil edition and sell, limited.
Well, and I think our job is now kind of industry stalwarts is to do that for you. Call them out when they don't give that option to somebody. Even it's like Adam Hughes probably don't need extra money. Jay Scott don't need extra money.
No, without a doubt.
But it's more about the respect to the artist.
Yes.
And if you're going to show that respect to those guys, you better show it to every guy under those guys.
I agree. It's a respect thing. I just see it as both ways of like, up and coming artists. We don't ask permission to do a Spider-Man print.
Right.
And it's theirs. So technically they can kind of do whatever they want with it. Do I think it's unethical? Yeah. Would I be pissed if it happened to me? I'd be a little butthurt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'd be like, well, try and see the silver lining. At least they thought it was cool enough to do something else with.
Yeah.
It only really sucks when it's supposed to be like a very limited edition.
Yes.
And there's a whole separate offshoot of it. That's where I'm like, hey, that's not cool.
What I would suggest is that any retailer out there that is doing this, like for instance, Jenny Frizen, you reprint a great Jenny Frizen cover and you're doing it as a retailer variant now, that you contact Jenny or you contact the artist and say, hey, do you want to get in on this? Right. What do you, at least do that at the very little,
Well, yeah, I'd be completely down with that because I buy into basically any cover I've done for the last 5 years. It's part of my deal is I want a percentage of the run. Like you don't even have,
and that's what one of my deals with.
I want books.
One of my deals with John Tyler Christopher is every variant I've done with him, he gets a sealed case of of whatever that is. So it's 150, 200. And I give him that as an extra comp for, doing business with him. That's just what normal people do.
Right. But I think exactly. Also, the biggest thing is the standards to do a exclusive or a variant has completely changed, right? Back in the day when I was doing 20 exclusives a month, you would actually talk to the artist. You would talk to the inker and you would get together and we'd say, okay, we're going to do this. Zenoscope would come back and say, okay, how does this look? And you don't have that anymore. It's pretty much
outside of Marvel and DC. Every other company, they don't care. It's only Marvel and DC that doesn't want
cash, and that's good enough for them. And that's the difference, and it's really changed the game for a lot of people. Speaking about all this, and this is a great way to move this over there. Tell us about working with Polito.
Yeah,
working with Polito.
Yeah.
I love Bryan. Bryan is two different guys with me. I was a big fan of Lady Death as a kid. My neighbor was a National Guard and loved comic books. He was the only other person I knew, and he was an adult that had toys and comics and had, I didn't know what Lady Death was. He showed me that. Deadpool. First time I saw Deadpool was because of him. I even painted a Lady Death when I was like 13 or 14 in the National Guard armory wall. Bryan is a very smart man as far as what he has created with Coffin Comics. He's another one of those guys that's ahead of the curve. Like he follows the trends and sees what's changing and adjusts before it's even changed. And I kind of follow suit, like, okay, well, this is a good idea. Should I do this? And I kind of think back, like, Bryan doesn't really question himself. He just does it. Like, he'll just do it. He knows it's going to work. He bets on himself all the time. So I love what Bryan has created. As a creator myself, like, I can only aspire to have, half of what that man has done with Kickstarters and books and all that in general. And then as a person, he's just one of the nicest, most 100% real guys you'll meet. Like him or not, he'll be upfront and real with you. He may be professional about it, but he'll be real with you.
Right.
Well,
real quick, how did he approach you the first time? Was it at a convention? How did that approach happen?
I was on a panel and they asked about stuff you'd like to work for. And I told the Lady Death story of painting it as a 13-year-old. And it was one of those, like, I would love to get a chance to do that for real, like do a real Lady Death piece. And about a year later, he had contacted me. And my first cover with him didn't actually get published for, I think, 2.5 years before he actually released it.
Wow.
And then it was a good year after that before I did another one. And then I did one more.
He kept you locked up like some Prince tracks, huh?
Yeah. He did a few, and then all of a sudden it was like, here, you're gonna do a cover, you're gonna do another cover, you're gonna do another cover, hit another one, hit another one. So it was fun. It was just one of those. The timing was right, and he hit it, and it was just like, all right, Ryan, you're done. You've done all this stuff, and you're a pinup guy, and now do all this stuff with me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna say no. He hits me up for the weirdest things, and I'm like, yep, that sounds fun.
So my question is, and I don't want you to take offense at this, because it's a next level question. So you start out in Artist Alley doing Spider-Man prints and whatever you can do to get by and kind of get out there. Then you kind of move into kind of the questionable homage world with Hardly Thin and Slave Leia, and just kind of it's an ongoing topic for all 20 episodes of the show here.
Oh yeah.
But now you're doing Turtles and you're doing Lady Death, and now you've made it. You've kind of hit that, what I call that next level. You've achieved the license realm where your work is attached to things that you grew up. Do you look? I mean, obviously you look back as the training to get you to this place, but do you see where people have, in hindsight, kind of ooh, that's a little too close to this character? Well, you talk about owning your own IP someday, like Bryan does.
Yeah.
Do you see now why those people fight the people who are kind of trampling on that IP by?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I've always done, and it's something that I don't know what that says, Astronomicon. I don't know what that means.
Oh, that's a local show for us. Yeah, give us more details, real shit.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I've never even tried to go that. But Shannon and I have really pushed it even further now because it is getting so bad in the industry with certain things.
Homage, cosplay variants.
Right. And with the homage thing, I've never really cared about the homage thing because I get retailers that are like, hey, do this, but you're going to do this cover homage. I really don't want to do it. Some of the covers, if they're my favorite cover, then I like doing it. If it's just because it's, Spider-Man 300, I'm like, really, again? No, I don't want it. The only time I won't do an homage to somebody is if I know that dude dislikes people homaging his stuff. Like, I know Scotty Young, he hates homages because it's confusing.
Yeah.
I won't do a Scotty one. I did it once, and then I found out and was like, yeah, I won't do that. Like, I know Scotty. I was like, yeah, all right, now I know. I will, I won't homage your stuff. And to me, it's just a respect thing. If you don't like it, like, I'm not going to step on your toes. I'll leave it out. The cosplay thing, that kind of started with Zenoscope, and it was very well done. It was very well, like, we knew who that was supposed to be, but it was not that person. It's their character and the dragon and this instead of a phoenix, whatever. It was done well. And it started turning into all out, like, there's, no holds bar, Wild Wild West.
I accidentally started that whole thing, Ryan. The first ever cosplay variant was Francesco doing a zombie or Monster Hunter survival guide for Detroit Fanfare. And he and I designed the entire book, and it was all cosplayers turned to zombies, and the Monster Hunter was at the convention. And he had to get approvals and all that. And then right after that, they're like, oh, legal said we could do cosplay variants. Whoosh.
Yeah. As long as you fall under the guideline of X amount has been changed, this percentage, it's fine. But the problem now is, like, people aren't following dead on. That.
Yeah. Put the X-Men logo on her belt. Put the Phoenix, fiery Phoenix on her chest. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a book, we call it Con Artist, and we started it right around COVID, and it was right at the height of certain people's egos. Yeah, there you go. And it legitimately is me making fun of every aspect of Comic Cons and comic books and everything that we do. It follows a kid trying to be a comic book artist by going from one show to the other in the artist alley. I make fun of the different types of artists, the different types of writers, the con goers. I make fun of myself, Marat, my wife. She yells at us in this issue. I make fun of cosplayers, how there's multiple different types. There's the ones that put thousands of hours into a suit, and then there's one that they just buy a onesie at Spencer's Gifts and wear a bra.
Well, there's a place for all of those people. It's just a matter of where the hierarchy is.
Right. So Con Artists, like, we do a lot of the cosplay covers on Con Artists. And our rule is make it a cosplay cover. Like, don't just change the costume. Act like that character sewn this thing in her living room. Like, how would a normal person make a suit? No symbols, no logos, change the costume, show stitching, show this.
Yep.
Like, I did a Gargoyles one where she's dressed up as Demona, and you can see, like, she's got finger gloves on for claws and elbow pads that are wrapped around her whole elbow to have the spike there, not just drawing a spike on her arm.
Right.
I was like, make it what you would see somebody at a convention look like. Make it fake.
So let's talk from the chat. It's Figure Drawing is asking this, and it's a great topic to bring up with every artist that we have on the show. Matina has been very credibly accused of using AI art. DC has yanked every upcoming cover that could possibly come out. I think they've even scrapped one that was maybe actually in production. From what I heard,
I think so.
They scrapped 6 of them.
6 of them in production.
So I think every artist is kind of following that debacle.
So what's your take on it? in general, because Jesse and I have a different take, but you're an artist. I kind of want to hear your take on it first, and then.
So, I have both takes because I sell books as well.
Yeah.
As an artist, like I followed the Matina thing since like the first accusations of stuff years and years.
It was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I was hearing it.
No, it was even before that.
It goes back.
Yeah.
I think 6 or 7 years of he stole this piece from, a Art Germ picture, and he stole this piece from Greg Land and transposed everything.
The irony of stealing a piece from Greg Land, of all people.
Well, yeah.
We're an unfiltered. Fuck it, I'll say it.
No, you're good. I see all those comments. I see all the same things too. It's wild to me. I think like that right there is a blatant, like you're not even stealing bits and pieces of art. You just stole something and then threw it through AI.
Yeah.
There's no way somebody just accidentally drew 2 tails of the S. Like, it's AI.
Yep.
I think it sucks. It's awful to see. I've seen the guy draw. The dude's got skill, so I don't know why you take the easy route.
Yeah.
And that's, there's a lot of people that are doing that right now. Is like, I can draw, but I can do, a wireframe image and feed that.
But do you think
AI.
it's part of what you were saying earlier, which is you and your wife have kind of a safety valve of,
rules.
This is how much work. This is the rules that we're going to live by. Blah blah blah. And I'm going to keep my production going at my pace. But somebody like Matina maybe was getting so many offers so fast, so many variant covers for Marvel and DC that he was like, "Yeah, I'll cheat a little on this one. Okay, I really got to get 4 more covers done this month. Okay, I'll cheat a little bit more on this, and this to make my,
I mean, it could be. It's like, gateway drugs. I'm going to do it once, and then I'm going to do it again. And no one said anything, so I'll do it a little
But then it
more.
goes to what Jesse and my principle is. If the customers aren't bitching about it and the customers are buying,
right?
Where's the retailer to draw that line,
right,
and deny it to the customer?
I watched. I don't remember the first time you guys had it on, but I watched that. And you guys had great points. Like, if your customers are asking for it, like, who are you to say no?
Right.
That you're not going to carry it. I get both sides. As an artist, it sucks. But as a publisher, I can see a different side of that because, I can get great people on some of my books. I've had DeBalfo, I've had Eric Basaldua, all these guys doing covers for us. Beautiful covers, and the sales on those will still not touch what somebody that did AI that didn't know they did AI or whatever the case put online will outsell them like 10 to 1 because it has that digital realistic painted look, which is what is trending. So I get it, because if sales wise, if everyone's going towards that trend, like, you don't want to cut your sales off in the feet because I may piss some people off.
But it is interesting. So, you're in a different realm than Jesse and I are, except for when Jesse's hanging out at parties you're at.
Those are the best ones.
Do you think DC, so 6 years, I wasn't even paying attention 6 years ago. I know I heard about it 2 years ago. Do you think DC is taking the pressure from its creators to make this sweeping?
I think they are now.
Yeah.
If they weren't before, they definitely are now. I mean,
that's going to have to be the tail that wags this dog. Because if you feed it to Jesse and I, we're going to be like, hey, do the customers want to buy it? We'll keep buying it.
Right.
But if the artists,
it's a sticky subject, man. As an artist,
that's why we cover it here, Ryan.
Yeah,
come on.
It's fine. And I only say sticky because as an artist, like, I hate to see arts go that direction.
Yes.
But as an industry, as retailers, as sellers, if that's your bread and butter, if people are only starting to buy these things, like, you have to. And as publishers, if people are going to start okaying it, everyone's going to do it.
Yeah.
The moment any of the big companies say, fuck it, we're going to allow it, I think you'll see the end of a lot of the traditional artists in the industry.
That's scary.
For a short time.
Right.
I think it's only a bubble because
but here's the
after
thing.
a while, it's just people are just going to get the same shit over and over.
You know what I also liken this to is the Napster era of music, where a lot of these musicians who are like, you're costing us money, you're costing us money. And they're like, but wait a second, only us can stand on that stage and get $50 a ticket.
Right.
So let's get out on tour. And guess what? A cover swiper and an AI keyboard artist
prompt engineer,
is never going to be able to sit at a table and do a $200 commission.
Right. That's the thing is your original art is going to be what your bread and butter is for a while.
Right.
And at the same time, I really don't think a majority of the people that are saying, fuck it, let AI go, are actually comic buyers anyways.
Right.
Most of them are internet trolls that are just like, oh, you just want to gatekeep and stop people from being able to do what they want to do. The industry knows a lot of these guys aren't going to support it. They're not going to buy all this stuff.
Yep.
But the ones that do, like what percentage is that? Is it really the hill you want to die on from?
Imagine that first
1%.
Imagine that first editor who had to get a hold of Adam Hughes after getting, fucking Adam Hughes on that Harley Quinn reprint, having to ask him to do work for him. It's like, maybe I won't this time, guys.
Right.
Maybe I'll take the 3 offers from Marvel and, tell you to go fuck yourself. We don't know those
you'll
stories.
see it more a lot in smaller indie books, self-published people.
Yeah.
You'll see it come out a lot more first, but I don't think it'll be that big of a deal with the big industry because they'll lose too many people buying. There's going to be more people not buying than there would be buying.
Yeah,
sure. Hey, Ryan, you brought up something in this conversation, you brought up the customer aspect of it. How have you evolved with going to being at a convention to now all of a sudden turning on your camera and saying, you know what, Ryan Kincaid is doing a convention right now. I'm at San Diego and I'm at Denny's right now. How have you evolved with that?
Fear.
Yeah.
Lots of fear.
Really? So you had that fear of turning on the camera at the beginning?
No. You know what I don't like? I'm not going to say I don't like cameras, but you've known me outside of cons. Like you've seen me at a con on your panels at shows.
Yep.
And you've seen me at dinner where everyone's goofing off and talking, and I'm, drawing on my phone. I'm quiet outside of normal stuff. Like I don't talk a lot. But I'm a bartender at heart. I can turn that shit on and off, whenever it's needed. I do a lot of shows with, the J brothers, and they used to throw me on the most random panels. They're like, oh, we need somebody, go get Ryan. Like he'll
and the J brothers do not get the love and respect they deserve in this industry for literally creating what I think is the variant game.
I mean, I love the J brothers. They're great.
Yeah.
They're awesome people. But Jimmy is notorious for, I did a writer's panel. I'm like, I literally got up there and was like, I really don't know why the hell I'm here, guys, but let's go.
Yeah.
Because most of us in the industry are very introverted, and I can turn it off and just kind of play with the crowd and play with viewers, do whatever. We started going live with random retailers a lot in the beginning. Was like with Sean Haduchko. We would do shows, and this was when we were both still very small, and he and I would share a room, and he would spend all day getting all the books he could find, going back to a hotel room and selling them on Facebook Live. And I'm legitimately like the floor, and we've moved everything into the bathroom. There's no TV, there's no lamp. It's just all in the bathroom, and there's me on a chair drawing while he's got every inch of the hotel room selling. Yeah. And I was always doing that with him. And then I'd be like, hey, Sean, I signed this book, sell that book. And then I'd remark a book, and I'm like, hey, Sean, sell that. And then Sean would be like, hey, Ryan, just sketch while we're doing this, do that. So I did so many of those shows with him that I had an online presence. And when COVID hit and, pencils were down for everybody in the industry, I was probably the same reaction that most people had was, well, fuck, what are we going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no shows, there's no drawing, people aren't doing shit. And my fear response was, fucking Facebook Live, dude, let's go. Like, I'm going to draw every single night, and we're going to just goof off with people, build an audience, and we would do like little Facebook Live sales the same way Sean would do it with my own products. And then it got to the point where I was doing it every single night, and I was drawing a random character and then auctioning that off at the end of the night. And then I was doing something else. So we'd do 2 or 3, and then we started a Nerf game. The biggest thing I hated at conventions was when Harley Quinn first came out. When they did the Harley #1 for years, I'd do a convention and I'd draw 75 Harley Quinns.
Yeah.
Anytime I open up commissions, I get Mary Jane, Black Cat, Spider-Gwen, Gwen Stacy, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, the #1s that I get. So I started doing I got a 11 by 17 sheet, picked 100 random characters. I would shoot it with a dart gun, just a sticky Nerf one, and whatever character that landed on, that's who I was drawing.
That's cool.
And I would not go back to that character again until we covered the sheet.
I remember back in the day, like mid 2000s, like early to mid 2000s, Adam Hughes still had, giant, what do they call them? Lists, sketch lists when you do a show.
Yeah.
And he was enamored with the Star Wars girls that I represented at the time. So I actually got to get, a sketch request, and he was like, "Oh, I've already got a Slave Leia for today, but I could do a Slave Leia for you tomorrow because I only do one Slave Leia a day." And so he was kind of what I think cultivating those sketches. He didn't want thousands of Slave Leia sketches out in the, just that it diminished it. So he would do a Slave Leia, he would do a regular Leia, he'd do, this, Wonder Woman or this character. So you had to pick one of the ones he hadn't done yet.
Right.
And I always thought that was brilliant.
I do that a lot. I don't do like normal commissions that much. I open them up online once a year or so. I do a few of them at shows. I don't do a lot because I'm usually by myself and it's hard to draw and talk nowadays. But I will do like right now I'm doing, the Scarlet Spider, and I'll do random covers, whatever I feel like drawing that day. And I just throw them back there. And when I have, 50 or 60 of them, I put them online and I sell them, or I take them to shows. And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing commissions, but I have, 50 that you can choose from.
Right.
Unless it's somebody I know is a fan. It's not somebody I just met. If I know that person's coming, they're like, yeah, I want a commission. I'm like, okay, you've supported me for years. Like, I'm seeing, let's do it.
I saw a new webpage, and I was I just found out about this last week after one of the shows, and I want to ask you your thoughts on this Nerd Crawler thing. This is fascinating to me because
it's still very early. It's still in its, like, I'm going to say beta testing. It's a great concept. It's for those guys that don't have the time to do, their Facebook Lives or their own website or eBay Live or whatnot. You can just throw something on there and see what happens. I don't think it has an audience reach for everybody yet. Like Arthur Adams and Frank Cho, man, if you look at some of the stuff that they've got on there and the bids on that are absolutely great for them. Like they post about it all the time. But if you also notice, there's a lot of guys that you haven't heard of that are trying to get on there and sell their art. And it's nothing but good for artists. I can't say anything bad about it. I just know it's still growing. I think it also, it's very much this middleman philosophy. And I know you've had to have come across a lot of these. Yes.
There's always these guys who are like, oh, I'll aggregate you into this thing that only benefits me and the people who sign up with me. And it kind of smells of one of these middleman Ponzi scheme type things.
I mean, I've sold a couple pieces on there, and it really it's just like they are kind of the middleman, but they're not taking advantage of anything. You can either choose to do it this way, or you can choose to do it your way. If you use like their way, they get, X percentage. But if you do literally everything on your own, they don't get that percentage. It's just, your monthly subscription or whatever. Igor, there's a website posted somewhere that's linked into here that I do sketches on. I like it. I've tried it a couple times. I think my problem is I just haven't had time to put stuff.
So let me ask you my last question, because
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Stop it. So you got to do Lobo, you got to do Turtles. Unfortunately, you didn't get to reap the benefits of your Turtles. You're doing
not yet.
Yeah. What's the big future goal post? What's the thing that you want to do most, where you're at right now, and you project yourself forward, and when you're talking to your wife and like, man, I really want to get this call to do this? So
my biggest book that I could probably do would be Spider-Man. It'd either be Spider-Man or something with the X-Men, and preferably Iceman. Like those are always been my two favorite characters. Spider-Man, I like most people, we've grown up, we've loved, but my favorite artists have all worked on Spider-Man. Turner, Moderera's done Spider-Man, Scott Campbell's done Spider-Man, one of my favorite people is Ramos, and that's notoriously Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to say one day, like, I did it. Like I got the opportunity.
When they do that Spider-Man with all the names of all the people who have done it, you just want to be one of those names on that list.
I could be the very one on the bottom. I don't give a shit. I just want to be able to
get your name on the cup.
Yep. Even if they're like, you did it, but you're never doing it again.
Yeah.
You did it once. I'm good.
All right, but you got to put that stuff, just like you talking about Lady Death sketches at the National Guard post, and that got to Brian Pulido, and then you get to do Lady Death.
Right.
You got to put that stuff out into the universe and hope it resounds somewhere.
I mean, it hasn't happened yet. As Jesse said, my wife is a very lovely person, but she doesn't know everybody. The funny story of that, like I know CB. I know Ricky. I've had talks with them on why I'm not doing anything yet, and I completely understand. We're working on some of that. CB just happened to show up to Planet Comic-Con in Kansas City, and he came to my booth, and he was having a chat with me, and he was looking at all my art, and he was like, yeah, so I don't like, and it was a Lady Death cover that she was dressed up as Elvis, and he's like, change this up a little bit. We could have used this as a Dazzler cover. Like that would have been great. Like, and Shannon pops in like at that moment, and she goes, well, yeah, he should work for Marvel. We have to talk to people. And I looked, and I was like, well, babe, that's the person that you want to talk to.
That's the person to talk to.
And she's like, well, who are you? And he introduces himself. And she's like, oh, I've never met you. And I was like, babe, that's like the big guy. Like that's the big guy.
Here's the thing, though, Ryan. The fact that CB Cebulski stood at your table and talked to you means you got a big toe in the door.
Right. Sure. Right.
Because CB don't stop and look.
Correct.
And talk if
don't worry, that pissed a little bit.
Yeah.
I beat a little bit. Yeah. It was more funny that my wife's first reaction was, oh, so you'd be the big boss. Then why aren't you hiring my husband? You just said he's good enough for Dazzler. Get him on the book then. And I'm just, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like Shannon. And at the same time, I'm like,
No, but you know what? No, it's good. CD laughed. I guarantee you.
Seed planning is so imperative in this industry. I always talk about that. You can be at the con all day, but I'm going to tell you the best network you have is after the con, and where you're having
without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah. Most of my opportunities always come from just afterwards and talking.
And this isn't an insult, though. I hear that story about you and Sean selling at the booth, at the in the hotel room and all that. I'll tell you what, there's no amount of money that you can pay me to miss the gab time at the hotel bar. There's just
you're not
no
wrong.
amount.
Yeah. You're not wrong, but these were usually shows that there was no gab time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The shit shows, sure. Go to your hotel room.
These weren't the HeroCon after parties.
Okay. I'm just saying, and to all you young artists out there, you might make a couple $100 back at your hotel room doing a live sale afterwards, but you might make $1,000 or a $10,000 or $100,000 contact at that bar.
Right. I got my first editor from DC to say, I don't know why you're not hired yet. I'll fix that. Having drinks with Mark Brooks at Emerald City Comic Con at the lobby.
Yep.
Mark introduced me. He's like, he's great. And he's like, why don't you work for us? And I said, the only answer I've ever gotten was because, I'm a wannabe J. Scott Campbell. And he looked, he goes, well, Campbell doesn't do covers for DC, so why the fuck don't you? And
Hell
then
yeah.
months later, they told me I could. So then I did.
We talked about early in the show about how Alan Stewart has worn many hats in this industry and this and that. And you've kind of started putting those hats on, but more importantly, you've kind of taken that, you said that it was a little fear that got you, behind the camera, but you've kind of started putting on these hats where you're pivoting to use these new technologies, live selling, right? You're selling your own variants. And then also you kind of hit on it, the Kickstarter stuff and crowdfunding. How important is crowdfunding to the comic book industry right now?
For the indie world, it's huge. I mean, huge. Think about you guys, earlier on, we're talking about the industry and how, you'd have to go to your 7-Eleven or the comic book shop to buy books. Well, even as far, as soon as like 10, 15 years ago, the only way to make a comic book and get it out there was to pitch the idea to a publisher. And, for the longest time, it was pitching the idea to Image. And you had to have 5 issues done before they would even look at it. That's a lot of time and money for a maybe.
Right.
Kickstarter comes in and is like, do it and see if it works. Now, I do it a different way than a lot of people. They run the Kickstarter and then do the book. They have some covers to show, and that's about it. Maybe a page or 2. I don't do a Kickstarter until that shit's done. It's ready to go. There is no hiccups. There's no this might not come for a while. It's done. As soon as it's funded, like we can hit print. And for me, I've learned that's the best part, because once you get burned on one, you kind of lose that base.
Yeah.
The internet is very quick to you fucked up once, you're gonna fuck up forever.
Yes.
So for indies, man, like there's no reason you can't tell a guy that's trying to become a comic book artist to not create his own book. Like there's no reason that they can't do it. It's just there.
Yep.
Get it done, get it out. Even if you're only covering yourself in a cover, like at least it's going to start getting it out to an audience. As fans. Before, like you could put your heart and soul into an issue and no publisher wants to do it. And you did it for what? Like, earlier you guys talking about Josh Baylock, how he pitched that, he had the idea that he really wanted to do, but his art wasn't good enough.
Right.
If he was in, somebody else's shoes, that may never have been seen.
Yeah.
Whereas now you have a way to do it, whether people like it or not, and it gets funded or not, it's a different story, but you have a shot.
Well, it's a meritocracy. It's back to a meritocracy where if you can build a crowd and you can sell you and you can sell the product, you then have established what your bar is.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of, if not the biggest, it's one of the biggest tools for comic book creators in their shed right now. Me and Jesse were just talking yesterday or the day before about how, it's great to be on one of the big publishers, DC or Marvel, but it's even greater to have feet in both sandboxes, right? You're saying.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword. On doing that stuff, you kind of have to, depending on your end goal. If your end goal is to just put out Kickstarters a couple times a year, if you can manage to do a Kickstarter a quarter and your Kickstarters each do very well, you could live off that. You could do that and be just fine. If you're doing conventions and stuff, you would never survive on just doing Kickstarters. Like, no one knows who you are because Kickstarter crowds don't necessarily always go to Comic Cons. They're their own little niche.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to play both parts. You have to do your indie stuff, do your, try for your Marvel, your DC, your Dynamite, your Boom, your this, your that, whatever the case is, while you work on your own thing. Because it's eyes on you and it's eyes on your product.
Yes.
You have to go to cons to have eyes on you, to have a.
You gotta build the circle. You've got to build at
you
every
don't have
level.
A fan base if you don't show your face anywhere.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And no one's gonna care if you do show your face if you're not working on something that they don't know.
Yeah.
At cons.
Yep.
How important is it to, when a fan comes up to your table, to how you greet them and how you interact with fans at cons?
I talk the same way to just about everybody. I talk to everybody. It's hello to everybody. People will tell me stories. I'll tell stories back. Unless I'm swamped with, doing signatures like crazy, I try and give everybody as much interaction as I can.
Yeah.
That's what people are there for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially the older generation, because what I hear all the time is, man, I remember 30 years ago, you could just go to a con and get signatures for free and sketches for $20. Now, granted, that's not how things work anymore. No. We all have to get paid. Yeah. I don't charge for signatures because as a collector, I don't like getting charged.
Right there.
Shannon wants that money, damn it. You gotta start charging.
Yeah.
No,
I think that's an important part of the
my
game.
My favorite quote is Scott Snyder, and I was talking to him about charging for signatures. He's like, what people don't understand is Batman paid for my house, a house I didn't think I'd ever afford. Batman has put my children's future completely where I want it, into good schools and a great house. I will never charge to sign a Batman comic ever. And I just loved that. I was like, okay, yeah, that's him saying the work I did on this one project has sustained what I wanted out of my entire career. I'm never going to charge for that. Now, he may do public signings with CGC, and there's charges involved with that, and blah, 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 blah. But for that one book, if it's at a convention, he's not going to charge for it. And you got to set those little boundaries.
Yeah. Like we I don't like charging fans. I've got no problem when a retailer comes up with a stack of stuff that I know they're just turning around and selling. I'm like, okay, we're going to work something out now.
Right.
But when that kid comes up with a Ninja Turtle book, like, I'm not going to tell the kid, $5, dude.
Yep.
Or a real fan comes up with 2 or 3 books. Like, I'm not charging that kind of stuff. That's, to me, I just can't do it.
Or when it's Ronnie's birthday, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Well, before we let you go, I definitely want to say thank you for spending the time with us tonight. We all know how important time is for everybody, and you jumping on with us for an hour and a half means a ton.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can get you on as much as possible over here. So we'll be bugging you in the future. But I want to make sure to let everybody know, go check out the Kickstarter that you're getting ready to start. I saw this image on your IG, the John Royal cover, and absolutely amazing.
Short hair, not the right lightning bolt, not the right direction.
I mean, this is a beautiful cover, and also I suggest everybody go help the Kickstarter and get some cool stuff. You're going to be at San Diego also, which is very very cool, and hope to see you there. What other than the Turtle book, is you have anything exciting planned for San Diego?
I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say what I'm doing, but I guess I will anyways, because I'm not going to say like I'm not showing it off. We do have the Ninja Turtle book. I do this. That's what this is for. This will be actually released in San Diego. The logo cover.
Great.
Hell yeah.
We also have. I just did a Chitara #1 cover through Dynamite with myself and Sabine Rich. That will be bringing out there. Witchblade.
Oh yeah, beautiful,
yeah,
gorgeous.
right.
Yeah.
And we're big fans of Dynamite over here, and Nick Barucci, one of the best. Yeah.
I'm an 80s kid at heart, so when I was pissed that I missed Thundercats alone.
I mean, I will say this is the first show in 20 episodes where Nikki hasn't been in the chat, but I mean, we'll let him slide this week.
What the crap.
Yeah.
I'm a big Thundercats and Silverhawks fan, so I was pissed that I couldn't I couldn't get anybody that wasn't doing something already for Thundercats to work on it with me. And I think at that time the print run was supposed to be like 1,500, and it was just like I'm not taking that much on.
Right,
It's crazy.
sure.
But then Chitara #1 popped up on my list, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm in. I got a hold of Sabine Rich. It was like, hey, do you want to do this? We'll bring him to different shows. It'll be just you and me.
Yeah. Well, but it's back to that principle. You have to invest in yourself from time to time.
Yeah, you got to bet on yourself, because not everyone's going to bet on you, especially when the trend is not what you do.
Yeah.
We have a lot of stuff going for San Diego. The boys, we're doing something for the boys.
That's cool.
Well, and I think you need to figure out a way that you can meet up with Jesse, Brian, and myself and have a drink there while we're there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always down for a drink.
Yeah.
I'm not technically in the show. We're just floating around.
That's why I was asking.
Like Murat, we kind of make Hot Flip's booth our home base in the artist alley, and we kind of just trade off who Rob's Liefeld's over here for this time period, and then he's done, and Murat comes in, he's done, and I'll come in, and then we'll just kind of be live streaming with eBay Live guys, whatnot guys.
Yeah.
I like it that way because I can actually experience the con for myself for once, because I've never been able to just spend time on the floor looking at things. It's always like, hey, I got 20 minutes. I'm going to run and grab this, or I'm going to run and grab that.
Yeah. You mentioned before we call it a night, I have to, you mentioned eBay Live. I have to call out our good buddy Drew at Wanted Comics, who you recently did some stuff with, which was excellent.
He's been texting me all night. I'm supposed to tell Dennis on his hunt for the Micronauts toys.
Drew's one of our favorite people, and that was great watching that eBay Live sale, and very cool stuff. And I think it's great to see the artists give their fans exactly what they want, real time. It's pretty cool to have that happen. Yeah. So
we don't get to do what we do if we don't have.
Drew just popped into the chat.
Streams on special shows. See, there he is.
Yeah.
If you don't have a fan base, if you piss everybody off, like no one's gonna buy your stuff, and then you can't do what you like to do. I've always thought of that.
Amen.
Like, your fans should be more family than anything, because they're the ones that keep you going.
Yep. Well, I agree. Couldn't have said it better. So
there you go.
Thanks for coming on, Ryan.
Absolutely.
And we'll bug you more in the future. And hope to see you in San Diego. We'll buy it. We'll get some drinks going for all of us. So
Jesse knows how to get a hold of me. It's easy. I have OCD, man. I answer everything.
There you go. All right,
Thank
tell
you, brother.
Shannon, have a good night as well. We appreciate you coming on. Okay.
I will. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you, brother. Ryan Kincaid, ladies and gentlemen, that was awesome. Great show. You guys that are watching this, that have been with us the last 20 episodes through all this time, this is the type of stuff that we bring you week in and week out. So make sure you guys sub up, hit that like button if you enjoy what you're watching. Everybody that's watching us on the replay, drop a comment. Let us know you're on the replay crew. And tell us what you think of the show. You guys got anything you want to say before we call it a night?
Go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, no. I'm going to be running around Central Illinois. I'm going to be popping into Hall of Heroes on my way down there. And I should be back to the land of living to figure out all the shit I have to get done before heading down to Phoenix and San Diego before San Diego. So that's all I'm doing.
Yep. Yeah. It's very cool when you kind of grow up with someone in the business, and to see Ryan and Shannon just become this great couple in the industry that people not just respect, but they actually want to work with. And that's, there's not a lot of great couples. I shouldn't say that in that measure, but there's very few of those type of couples in the industry. So it's cool to see that. I think, traditionally I do an eBay live show after the show. For some reason, the whole day I only put in 50 items. I try to show 150, 200. So I'm going to be taking the night off tonight, relaxing. Had a rough week shipping. Shipping is always the big thing. But, other than that, we have a great mix next week already. We've already got some good people lined up. So we'll definitely follow the show. Brian, I know you're working on the Facebook page. When is that? When are we going to be really focusing with that?
Facebook is rough for me. I was telling Jesse the other day that if there's one place out there that Jesse has the one up on me when it comes to technology, it's Facebook.
The 20
page.
Up. The 20 up. What are you talking about? One up.
Yeah.
It just that is the crazy world that I left many moons ago. I kept my personal thing just running and didn't really jump on Facebook. So Facebook has got up and ran away from me. So I'm learning how to do that again. But to be honest, I tell Jesse all the time whenever I chat with him and he's shipping books. I've just dipped my toe back in the live selling game. I've had 4 or 5 whatnot shows now, and it's been amazing. I've shout out to everybody that has purchased books from me and that's helping fund this San Diego trip this next month. But I gotta say, I've realized how important time is again. It's another moment where, you say yes to too many things. You do 5 live shows a week. You're, making sure everything is good on the back end, and you're producing and hosting, and then you throw in 2 or 3 more other shows. You realize how precious your time is. So we'll see how that all plays out.
Tony Stark has the greatest line in Endgame. No amount of money ever bought any amount of time. And when you are next to dead, like I was 7 years ago, and you start looking at all that time that you wasted doing other things. And, just like I was telling Ryan tonight, you never know if you're chasing this dollar over here, what you're going to miss over there. Yep. And for me, it's just about living life to the fullest. Sure, you got to make some money to do that properly, but you also have to make the time to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, death is undefeated, right? So that's how it kind of works out. Awesome night, folks.
Yeah, definitely. This was a great show. This was, like I said, this is exactly what I love about this show. Is most of the time it's Jesse and my friends, and Brian's friends just shooting the shit. And every once in a while we get somebody like Alan on that I don't think gets nearly, he doesn't get 99% of the love that he should get for what he is doing right now and what he has done as an experiencer in this industry. and Ryan, we're getting a glimpse of 16. What is it? 16 years in the industry, Jesse, for Ryan, and I don't think we've seen even close to what the next 16 years are going to be like for Ryan.
Yeah.
And it's great to have that and just put it out there.
Yep.
I get excited for this show.
Well, tomorrow night, you guys come join us for Wednesday Night Review. We'll be doing that about 10 p.m. Eastern, go over the new comic books of the week and a few other news and notes. Then Thursday, I'll be having another Whatnot sale. I just pulled out 3 short boxes of stuff to start loading. I'm finishing up the last of my shipping from the last sale on Sunday. Those will be out in the morning. And then Friday night, House of Stein, Hot 10 like always. Saturday night, Modern Comic Mayhem. And right back here on Tuesday for the next Industry of Comics show. Make sure you guys are following Jesse on eBay Live. He's always slanging comic books, and make sure you are following Dennis. If you're in the Michigan area, stop by the Mall in Monroe, check out his 2 shops there, and of course, all the links are in the bio. We'll try and get whatever ones aren't working here shortly, and we'll see you guys next time. So, adios.